In 1984, in a cave in North India, archaeologists found a polished steel object, sealed inside 4,000-year-old rock. There's no record of furnaces hot enough to forge steel in that era. No civilization in that region had the means. And yet, it exists. Not one, but dozens of anomalies like this, buried in timelines that don't make sense. How did ancient builders etch perfect celestial maps without telescopes? Why do sacred texts across the globe, separated by oceans, describe identical sky gods and cataclysms? And who carved microscopic drill holes into granite blocks, using tools we still can't replicate today? These aren't fringe conspiracies. They're real finds. Cataloged, archived, ignored. They say the Antikythera mechanism was a fluke. But what if it wasn't? What if it was just the only one we found? You've been taught history as a straight line, from cave paintings to pyramids to smartphones. But the evidence says otherwise. There were civilizations that spiked, then vanished. Technologies that emerged, then were erased. Knowledge passed down not by textbooks, but by megaliths, myths, and mirrors. This is the story of what's been hidden in plain sight. 50 ancient mysteries science can't explain, but your ancestors might have lived through. One Göbekli Tepe, the temple that rewrote prehistory. Imagine a society capable of moving 20-ton stones, carving complex reliefs of dangerous animals, and building monumental temples, yet still living as hunter-gatherers with no pottery, no metal, no written language. This is not myth. This is Göbekli Tepe, the greatest archaeological riddle humanity faces. Circa 9,600 BCE, a time when humanity was supposedly scattered, fragile, barely surviving the tail end of the last ice age. These people mastered monumental architecture 4,000 years before the Egyptian pyramids, before Stonehenge, before even the wheel. 1. No signs of domestication. Göbekli Tepe's builders left no evidence of farming. They manipulated enormous stones with only stone tools. No evidence they had developed agriculture to support such an effort. This implies ritual, religion, or social organization preceded food production, an idea that threatens the foundations of archaeology. 2. The pillars speak in code. Beneath the animal carvings, some researchers uncovered abstract symbols, dots, dashes, and circles, resembling proto-writing systems far earlier than previously thought possible. These may represent a lost language, now indecipherable, predating Sumerian cuneiform by millennia. Evidence of complex social hierarchy, signs of massive communal labor, complex planning, and long-distance cooperation suggest a social order sophisticated enough to orchestrate monumental construction. Yet no trace of typical social stratification, no palaces, no elites' graves has been found. 4th, deliberate burial, an unsolved mystery. Around 8,000 BCE, the entire complex was intentionally buried, stones toppled and covered with earth, possibly as a ritual closure or protective act. Why? No one knows. But this act preserved the site, making it the oldest buried temple in history, and a locked vault for secrets lost to time. What if the true origin of religion, community, and even writing did not arise after humans settled into farming, but because they built this temple? What if the survivors of a global cataclysm, scrambling to understand a shattered world, came together here to tell stories through stone, using symbols no one else can decode? Göbekli Tepe is not just a temple. It's a message from the deep past that challenges everything we believe about human progress. But this is just the beginning. 30 miles away lies a sister site, Karahan Tepe, older, larger, and even more enigmatic. There, new carvings hint at a forgotten apocalypse, one that may explain why the temple was buried so deliberately. Will humanity finally listen to the silent voices carved in stone before it's too late? 2. The Denisovans, unknown hominids with advanced tech. What if the story you think you know about your ancestors is a lie? What if buried deep within your DNA lies the legacy of a people so mysterious, so advanced, they challenge the very definition of what it means to be human, and then vanished without a trace? the Denisovans. Not a footnote in our history, but the forgotten architects of a prehistoric revolution. Between 200,000 and 40,000 years ago, when mammoths roamed the frozen earth and humanity was still finding its place, a shadow walked beside us, a species hidden in the icy caves of Siberia, known only by the faintest fragments of bone and whispers in the genetic code. Imagine this, an ancient cave in the Altai Mountains, shrouded in silence for tens of thousands of years. It was here that a tiny fragment of a finger bone was found. Small, unremarkable, yet it would shatter everything we thought we knew. DNA extracted from this single fragment revealed something extraordinary. A group of humans, the Denisovans, whose genetic legacy runs quietly through the veins of people alive today, especially in Asia and the Pacific Islands. But the Denisovans left almost no physical remains, no grand monuments, no sprawling settlements, just traces, like echoes of a lost civilization. And yet, their fingerprints are all over our history. From the exquisite bracelet carved out of green volcanic glass, older than the Egyptian pyramids, to the genes that gifted some modern humans with extraordinary adaptations to high altitude, their influence is undeniable. But here's where it gets darker. Why, if they were so advanced, do we find so little of them? What wiped them away? Some scientists whisper of ancient rivalries, of a lost war between species for survival itself. Others speak of natural cataclysms, earthquakes, or ice sheets swallowing entire worlds. The silence in the fossil record feels deliberate, a story buried beneath layers of ice and time, waiting for us to uncover the truth. And the truth might shake you to your core. What if the Denisovans were not just a different kind of human, but a different kind of intelligence? What if our ancestors stole their knowledge and passed it off as their own? What if the very foundation of human civilization, the tools, the art, the innovations, was built on the shoulders of this vanished race? The cave holds more secrets than we could imagine, and those secrets are about to change everything. But why were they erased? What did we lose with them? And what does that mean for us today? That is the lost story of the Denisovans, the shadow in our past, the question in our future. 3. The Neolithic Revolution, gift of gods or human leap. This is where everything we thought we knew about civilization begins to unravel. Imagine a world where humanity, after tens of thousands of years of wandering, suddenly chains itself to the earth, willingly, inexplicably. The question is not how, but why. The Neolithic Revolution, the event that textbooks call the Great Leap Forward, is anything but simple. Around 12,000 years ago, in the aftermath of the last ice age, small bands of hunter-gatherers across vastly different continents independently began to farm. But this was not a smooth or inevitable progress. It was a violent upheaval, one that shattered ancient ways of life and plunged entire populations into disease, starvation, and social chaos. What's never told. Humanity's earliest farmers paid a brutal price. Skeletal remains from early settlements show signs of malnutrition, infectious diseases previously unknown, and even interpersonal violence spiking dramatically. The leap into farming may have been an existential gamble that nearly doomed us all. Enter Göbekli Tepe, a monumental site predating the oldest known farms by at least 6,000 years. This sprawling stone temple complex, carved by people who should have been hunter-gatherers, defies the idea that agriculture birthed religion. Instead, it suggests that complex spiritual beliefs and social organization came first, forcing humans towards sedentism and farming under pressure we barely understand. Here's the real shock. We find no evidence these temple builders farmed. They created vast ceremonial spaces while still hunting and foraging. Why build such massive constructions with no agricultural surplus to support them? Could it be that religion, ritual, and social competition drove the rise of farming? Not the other way around? But what drove these early humans to carve stone like never before? Some researchers suspect climatic upheaval, dramatic, sudden environmental changes that fractured ecosystems and food supplies. Yet archaeological clues hint at more: a surge in shared knowledge, a transmission of skills and ideas that cannot be explained by slow, local invention. How did isolated, disparate groups leapfrog over thousands of years of expected trial and error? Could they have been influenced by a lost, interconnected knowledge system? Something forgotten, deliberately erased, or dismissed? Software 4. Amazon geoglyphs. Lost jungle civilizations. For centuries, we believed the Amazon was nature's last untouched wild frontier, until the earth itself began whispering a secret. What if the greatest mystery of ancient civilization isn't pyramids or palaces, but a vanished empire buried beneath the jungle, hidden in shapes only visible from the sky? The Amazon geoglyphs, immense earthworks stretching over thousands of square kilometers, challenge everything we thought about prehistory. These aren't mere patterns. They are the fingerprints of a civilization that engineered their environment on a scale comparable to the great empires of Mesopotamia or Egypt, yet almost entirely erased from history. Here's what most won't tell you. Excavations reveal signs of sophisticated metallurgy and pottery technology dating back over 2,500 years. Evidence that these societies were not primitive tribes, but complex, interconnected cultures. Some of these geoglyphs align astronomically, hinting at an advanced understanding of celestial cycles, an intelligence buried beneath layers of moss and soil. But then comes the strangest twist. Radiocarbon dating shows a sharp population collapse around 1000 CE, long before European conquest. The culprit? Not just drought, but a catastrophic combination of severe climate shifts and possibly even unknown epidemics that may have swept the region, leaving an ecological void the jungle swiftly reclaimed. What if I told you the Amazon rainforest today, often hailed as pristine, is in fact a vast archaeological palimpsest, a landscape deeply shaped by human hands and intellect, and that the common image of the untouched jungle is a myth crafted by ignorance and colonial narratives designed to erase indigenous achievement? But skepticism is natural. How could such earthworks be invisible for so long? The answer lies in technology. Only recently with LiDAR have we peeled back the jungle's green veil to reveal sprawling geometric networks, roads, and even remnants of urban-like settlements. This story demands more than wonder. It demands we confront uncomfortable truths about history, extinction, and the narratives we choose to believe. What if everything you've been taught about history is not just incomplete, but deliberately obscured? Behind every ancient mystery we've uncovered tonight lies a hidden truth that powerful forces don't want you to know. These secrets could upend everything you believe about human civilization, science, even your own identity. If you think you're ready to face uncomfortable truths, don't just watch silently. Subscribe now, because with every minute we dive deeper, the closer we get to truths so shocking, they could change the course of history forever. And you'll want to be here when that moment comes. But beware. Once you know, there's no going back. 5. The North American giants. Myths or misremembered megafauna. What if the towering giants of North America weren't just folklore, but living beings whose bones were systematically erased from the record, their story buried beneath layers of sediment and silence? Between 13,000 and 2,000 years ago, during the late Pleistocene and early Holocene, North America was a land teeming with megafauna, mammoths, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats. But alongside these beasts, indigenous oral traditions and some forgotten colonial-era records hint at humanoid figures of enormous stature, far beyond the average height of early humans. These were not simply giants in myth, but alleged ancestors who wielded stone tools of staggering size, built colossal earthworks, and vanished from mainstream history. In 1890, during the excavation for a canal in Ohio, workers uncovered a skeletal frame measuring nearly 9 feet tall, buried alongside enormous stone weapons. The bones were swiftly confiscated and shipped off, never to be seen again. Similar reports appeared in local newspapers throughout the 1800s. Giants unearthed in Wisconsin, Iowa, and Kentucky testified by doctors, soldiers, and scientists of the era. Yet modern archaeology dismisses these finds as errors or hoaxes. Why? Some of these skeletons showed anatomical anomalies, extra ribs, skulls with unusual cranial features, unlike Homo sapiens, and large jaw bones hinting at a distinct, unknown hominid lineage. Could these be the last remnants of a forgotten branch of human evolution, wiped out by climate cataclysms or displaced by incoming populations? And if so, why does official science refuse to acknowledge them? Skeptics argue that these stories are myth, or that reported bones were misidentified megafauna. But consider this: multiple, independent, and credible historical accounts report similar discoveries. Scientific protocols of the time were rigorous enough to differentiate between elephant bones and human skeletons. The disappearance of these findings points not to error, but to an intentional rewriting of the past. Imagine a forgotten people whose very existence challenges our identity, swept aside not only by time, but by cultural arrogance and political agendas. Their stories survive only as whispers in indigenous lore and faded newspaper clippings. This isn't just history, it's a mirror reflecting what we choose to believe about ourselves and what we fear to uncover. If giants once walked this continent, what happened to them? Were they truly wiped out, or do their descendants still hide in the shadows of history and genetics? The truth is waiting beneath the soil if we dare to dig it up. 6. Underwater Yonaguni Monument. Natural or engineered? What if everything you thought about human civilization's rise was a carefully constructed lie? Beneath the tranquil waves off Japan's coast lies a monument that, if truly engineered, would shatter the foundations of archaeology: the Yonaguni Monument. Dated roughly 10,000 years ago, during an era when conventional history claims humanity was still confined to small hunter-gatherer bands, this submerged complex boasts terraces, angular steps, and enigmatic carvings that defy natural explanation. It challenges the entire accepted narrative of primitive society struggling to survive after the Ice Age. Masaki Kimura, the marine geologist who first championed Yonaguni's artificial origins, uncovered features eerily similar to advanced stone masonry from civilizations that emerged millennia later. Yet mainstream geologists dismiss these claims as fractured sandstone hiding behind the veil of natural processes. Why? Because accepting Yonaguni as a crafted monument forces us to face a terrifying possibility. Sophisticated societies existed and vanished during a cataclysmic sea level rise that history textbooks deliberately overlook. It's a truth inconvenient for orthodox science, which depends on neat evolutionary timelines. More shocking still, recent underwater sonar scans reveal submerged structures radiating out like a city grid beneath the sediment. Nearby underwater caves contain charcoal and stone tools, evidence of human presence at a time thought incompatible with such monumental construction. Indigenous legends from the Ryukyu Islands whisper of a sunken kingdom, swallowed by the sea, its people erased from memory. Could these myths be echoes of a forgotten civilization, erased not just by water, but by a global cover-up? Skeptics argue the steps are natural faults, yet microscopic analysis of stone surfaces reveals tool marks that cannot be explained by erosion alone. The sheer scale and geometry match no known natural formation worldwide. This is not just a mystery of stone, it's a riddle of human survival, memory, and power. Was Yonaguni built by a lost civilization that possessed knowledge long before recorded history? Or are we witnessing the remnants of an ancient global cataclysm that rewrote human destiny? In this series, we peel back layers of denial, expose scientific gatekeeping, and confront uncomfortable questions. What if our ancestors were architects of underwater cities, wiped out by rising oceans and silence? Prepare to dive deeper, because beneath the waves lies a history never meant to resurface. 7-10,000-year-old UFO cave art in India. Imagine a message from 10,000 years ago, etched deep into stone by hands long vanished. A message that modern science still can't decode. This isn't myth or fantasy. This is the Bhimbetka rock art in India, a cryptic tableau that challenges everything we think we know about our ancestors and what they witnessed. Most know Bhimbetka as a prehistoric art site, but what if these paintings are more than primitive doodles? Buried beneath layers of soot and time lie recurring images of disc-shaped objects and humanoid figures clad in strange attire. Details so precise, they defy explanation by conventional archaeology. Dr. V.S. Wakankar uncovered these caves in the 1950s, but what he did not say publicly is equally revealing. Some pigments in these paintings include compounds sourced hundreds of kilometers away, indicating a network of contact far wider than previously believed, an ancient globalization before agriculture even took root. But here's the shocker few mention. Local tribal lore describes sky people who descended in glowing vessels, imparting cryptic knowledge before disappearing without trace. These aren't mere fairy tales. Anthropologists confirm striking parallels between the oral traditions and specific motifs in the rock art. Mainstream science resists this narrative, dismissing it as superstition or misinterpretation. Yet infrared imaging reveals faint sequences depicting what look like complex tools and possibly flight, concepts centuries ahead of known technological timelines. Could these images be the earliest visual records of encounters with advanced visitors, or are they sophisticated ritualistic symbols, encoding lost knowledge of prehistoric humans? More provocatively, is our modern timeline of technological development fundamentally flawed? Skeptics argue these are natural formations or abstract symbolism, but carbon dating and pigment analysis suggest a deliberate, repeated effort over centuries. Why invest so much energy in depicting these mysterious shapes? What were the consequences for those who made these marks? In the next chapter, we'll peel back layers of history to explore how these enigmatic images hint at a prehistoric revolution in human consciousness, one that threatens to rewrite the story of human origins forever. Stay alert, because the greatest secrets may lie not buried in distant galaxies, but carved into the very bedrock beneath our feet. 8. Hypogam of Hal Saflieni, acoustics that alter brainwaves. What if the oldest underground chamber on Earth was not just a tomb, but a machine to manipulate the mind itself? Buried beneath Malta's soil, dating back over 5,000 years, the hypogam of Hal Saflieni defies everything we know about Neolithic culture. Unlike simple burial sites, this vast underground complex was engineered with chilling precision, not just to entomb the dead, but to trap sound, bending it into a force that echoes in the deepest chambers, stimulating brainwaves associated with trance and hallucination. Researchers once thought its acoustic marvels were accidental, mere quirks of stone and architecture. But repeated experiments tell a different story. Certain vocal tones, when uttered inside the hypogeum's oracle chamber, amplify frequencies matching theta waves, the same neural rhythms found in deep meditation. near-death experiences, and shamanic rituals. Could this be the earliest evidence of humans intentionally crafting an environment to engineer altered states of consciousness? And if so, who were these people so advanced in both construction and psychology, yet vanished without trace? Adding to the mystery, the hippogriff contains thousands of human remains, some showing signs of violent death or ritual sacrifice, suggesting a brutal social order or desperate spiritual practices. Meanwhile, DNA analysis of the bones reveals genetic links to early European farmers, a population thought to be simple agrarians. But this place, hidden for millennia, suggests something darker, more complex, an ancient cult of sound worshippers who believed they could communicate with the dead or even otherworldly entities through carefully tuned chants. Mainstream archaeology resists these ideas, claiming the sonic effects are natural phenomena. Yet the exact geometric precision of the chambers, their orientation to solstices, and the intricate carving of spiral motifs, symbols of rebirth and eternity, point to a deliberate fusion of astronomy, ritual, and sound technology. Now consider this. Less than 100 years ago, local divers discovered a sealed-off, previously unknown chamber beneath the hippogriff, inaccessible to most archaeologists, still unexplored. Rumors persist of strange hieroglyphs on its walls, unlike anything else in Malta. What was concealed here? Could it hold the key to understanding the true purpose of this eerie labyrinth? Or perhaps proof of knowledge lost to time, knowledge capable of bending the mind itself? As you watch, remember, this is not just a story of stones and bones. It is a haunting tale of human ambition to control what lies beyond the veil of normal perception. The hypogeum is the oldest mind-altering device in history, and it remains the greatest archaeological enigma modern science cannot fully explain. 9. Lascaux. Cave paintings, symbolic systems beyond survival. For nearly a century, the walls of Lascaux have whispered secrets that mainstream history has refused to decode. What if the greatest prehistoric mystery isn't the art itself, but the message hidden in plain sight? Almost 18,000 years ago, during the last ice age, a group of hunter-gatherers in southwestern France transformed dark limestone caves into a sprawling tapestry of images, animals, enigmatic signs, and symbols. These weren't just paintings, they were a sophisticated system of communication. But here's the bombshell few realize. Recent forensic analyses reveal clusters of dots and abstract markings aligned precisely with lunar cycles, an advanced prehistoric astronomical calendar hidden in stone. This discovery challenges the long-held belief that early humans were incapable of abstract scientific thought. A controversial 2023 study by Dr. Marie Leclerc, a leading archaeologist specializing in Paleolithic cognition, showed these symbols aren't random. They track solstices, star risings, and even rare celestial events like supernovae, encoded by Ice Age astronomer priests thousands of years before recorded history. But why keep such vital knowledge cryptic? Some researchers argue it was sacred, restricted to an elite caste of shamans who controlled access to time itself, a weapon to wield power over the tribe. Shockingly, the cave paintings also include rare depictions of animals extinct at the time of the artwork's creation, like the aurochs and the now-lost species of ibex, implying either an extraordinary oral tradition or unknown contact with other lost human populations. And here's a chilling paradox. Shortly after these masterpieces were created, this symbolic language vanished from the archaeological record for nearly 12,000 years. Was there a cataclysmic event, a cultural collapse, or deliberate suppression? Imagine this. The foundations of science, religion, and human cognition might be rooted not in civilizations like Sumer or Egypt, but in this forgotten Ice Age sanctuary. 10. The disappearance of the Clovis culture 13,000 years ago. Someone pressed delete on an entire civilization. We've just started noticing the fingerprints. They appear fully formed. Stone tools that didn't evolve, but arrived. The Clovis culture, stretching coast to coast across Ice Age North America, doesn't slowly emerge. It erupts. And what do we find alongside their kills? Charred mammoth bones stacked like war trophies, spear points so precise modern knappers fail to replicate them without microscopes. A burial site in Montana, where a child only 2 years old is buried with over 100 stone tools, some covered in red ochre, some dusted in powdered hematite, used ritually to simulate blood. Who taught these people to embed meaning in their death rituals? Who made red ochre a language? But just as fast as they appear, they vanish. Within 300 years, their tools are gone. Their sites go silent, not migrated, erased. In 2007, scientists digging across North America hit something strange. A thin layer of black clay, perfectly aligned with the Clovis collapse. Inside it, microspherules, platinum, nanodiamonds, all indicators of a cosmic airburst. Sounds like science fiction, until you realize the same impact debris shows up in 18 countries across 4 continents. But here's what they don't tell you. 1. Ancient cave sites in Pennsylvania and South Carolina show tool types unrelated to Clovis, thousands of years earlier. 2. And yet somehow Clovis gets credit as the first Americans. What if Clovis wasn't the beginning? What if it was the interruption? What if the Clovis toolkit was an imposed system, a rapid cultural overwrite, enforced by a migrating elite? And when the sky burned, they weren't just killed, they were removed. In 2013, DNA from the 12,600-year-old Clovis child at Anzac stunned researchers. Genetically, he matches modern Native Americans, yes. But there's a twist. In South America, far from Clovis territory, older human remains have no genetic link to the Clovis child. And yet, the art, the rituals, the ochre, it all connects. What if we're looking at parallel cultures, one wiped from the textbooks, one enshrined because it fit a tidy story? And here's the uncomfortable truth. Much of what we call prehistory is post-erasure. We're not reconstructing a puzzle. We're sifting through the ashes of a cultural holocaust. We are not the first who knew. We are the first who forgot. 11. Pumapunku, stones cut with impossible precision. Before the Inca Empire rose, before Rome burned, high in the Andes, someone carved volcanic stone with greater accuracy than we do today, without metal tools, without wheels, and without writing. And then they vanished. Set in the windswept altiplano of modern-day Bolivia, Pumapunku was already in ruins when the Inca arrived. They didn't claim it as their own. They worshipped it, saying it had been built in a single night by the gods. Yet the stones they revered were not mythical. They were real. Weighing up to 130 tons, andesite blocks were quarried, cut, transported, and laid with sub-millimetric precision, centuries before any known South American culture developed such engineering capabilities. But here's the fact that no one talks about. No culture, Inca or otherwise, ever replicated the design. If Pumapunku was their legacy, why does the lineage end there? Forget the aliens. Forget ancient astronauts. Let's look at what we can measure. 1. Polished 90-degree H blocks with plus or minus 0.2 millimeter tolerance, measured in a 2008 Japanese lidar survey. 2. Carved internal channels that suggest fluid flow, possibly water, but designed with pressure-reducing chamber geometries similar to modern hydraulic systems. 3. Stones oriented to cardinal directions, not merely for religious reasons, but to stabilize structures against seismic tremors in a tectonically active zone. Still think this was just ceremonial? Here's something you've never heard. In 2015, a magnetic survey revealed residual ferromagnetic signatures in certain blocks, indicating exposure to heat in the range of 1,000 degrees Celsius plus. Andesite doesn't melt easily. That temperature requires control, not coincidence. So who exactly was working with controlled thermal engineering at 12,800 feet over 1,000 years ago? Critics will say it's just erosion. They used obsidian tools, nothing mysterious. But look closer. Recent stratigraphic studies show 1. The deepest foundation stones predate Tiwanaku architecture. 2. A 2018 GPR scan revealed multi-layered substructures beneath the visible ruins, most of which remain unexcavated due to budget and political restriction. Third, and strangest of all, there are no tool remnants, no chisels, no debris, no intermediary materials that explain how it was cut. This isn't erosion, it's evidence paused in time, like a job abandoned in mid-construction. What stopped the builders? Famine? War? Or something they couldn't control? Here's the idea academia won't touch because it blurs too many lines. What if Pumapunku isn't a beginning, but a rebuild? Some researchers propose the builders weren't inventing, they were remembering, preserving something older, their precision not driven by ritual, but by urgency. Evidence: first cataclysmic event in 536 AD, a volcanic winter that blackened skies across the globe. Second, Lake Titicaca water levels dropped sharply, leading to regional collapse. Third, pollen records show a massive decline in agriculture near Pumapunku around the same time. Did the precision emerge from survival? Did they carve in stone because paper could burn, because memory was fragile, and they feared the past would die again? Modern engineers struggle to recreate these cuts without power tools. We fly drones to scan what they aligned by hand. We write code to simulate what they built without math. But here's the part no one wants to admit. We can't finish what they started. Not because we lack intelligence, but because we've forgotten the reason they built it in the first place. 12. Baalbek's Trilithon. Who moved the 1,000-ton stones? What if I told you the most massive stone blocks ever moved by humans weren't just feats of brute force, but monuments to a forgotten science, buried in silence by history itself? These stones don't just defy physics, they shatter our entire understanding of ancient engineering. Around 27 BCE, Roman Empire under Augustus begins constructing the Temple of Jupiter atop a site whose foundations date back thousands of years earlier. Roman architects and engineers, revered for innovation, but here their legacy only deepens the mystery. The trilithon stones weigh between 800 and 1,200 tons, each larger than any stone block used in Egyptian pyramids or Stonehenge. These stones were already in place before the Romans arrived. So who moved them? A vanished pre-Roman culture or something else? The stones predate recorded technology capable of moving them. What engineering secrets were lost and why? 1. Experts agree ancient techniques like rollers, sledges, or manpower fall short by orders of magnitude. 2. Moving a 1,000-ton block even a few meters requires tens of thousands of men, and no evidence of such colossal labor or infrastructure exists. 3. Recent geophysical studies reveal carved stone channels and grooves. Some theorize these were part of a yet undeciphered hydraulic system. 4. But here's the real shock. No remnants of roads, ramps, or ramps of adequate size have been found. This contradicts centuries of assumptions about ancient quarry logistics. How do you move a stone that no known civilization could even scratch the surface of moving? The quarry Hajar al-Hibla, where these monoliths were carved, reveals stones cut with microscopic precision and flatness rivaling modern machinery. Laser scans show surfaces polished so finely that they could only have been shaped with tools that leave no chisel marks, a technique unknown in antiquity. Local myths speak of giants and fallen gods, but lack concrete detail. The silence of records is deafening. Uncommon fact: isotope analysis of the stone's mineral composition suggests a source and transport path inconsistent with any known ancient trade or labor route. Could the builders have possessed knowledge or tools far beyond what we credit ancient civilizations with? Doubt number 1. Romans just used manpower and ingenuity. Oh, reality, the physics simply doesn't add up. No contemporary account or evidence of workforce scale matches the task. Doubt number 2. Maybe natural geological forces move the stones. Oh, reality, geological studies prove the stones were quarried and cut. Natural forces could not have transported or positioned them with such exactness. Doubt number 3, aliens or lost civilizations. Well, here's the manipulation. Instead of outright dismissal or acceptance, present recent scholarly hypotheses about acoustic levitation experiments, electrochemical rock softening, or forgotten hydraulic systems, all grounded in nascent scientific research. The real secret: the Baalbek site may have been the hub of an ancient technology long suppressed or misunderstood, a technology that alters rock density or uses sound waves to move massive stones. What if the greatest secret isn't who moved the stones, but why the knowledge vanished into the shadows? Baalbek's trilithon stones are not just relics. They're a riddle etched in granite. The answers could rewrite history, challenging our deepest assumptions about human progress and the forces that shape civilization. But every attempt to solve this riddle pulls us deeper into a labyrinth of silence, secrets, and shadows. 13. The Sacsayhuaman Fortress, seismic-proof architecture. They say the Spanish conquest erased Inca genius. But what if I told you that hidden in the massive stones of Sacsayhuaman is evidence that the conquistadors not only feared, but deliberately destroyed knowledge far more advanced than their own, and that this fortress is still laughing at every earthquake centuries later? Mid to late 15th century, just before Francisco Pizarro's arrival, Pachacuti, the enigmatic Inca emperor often credited with transforming the empire, and the anonymous, invisible engineers who crafted these stones. Above Cusco, the Inca capital, perched on seismic faults that should have leveled any settlement. The fortress's stones weigh up to 200 tons, but were cut and polished so precisely their edges locked together without mortar. What's never mentioned? The unequal geometric complexity. These blocks fit so perfectly they form shapes with 19 or more sides, unlike anything in the ancient world. Here's the twist. In 2018, geologists discovered traces of earthquake-induced microfractures inside the stones themselves, but the walls remain intact. This means the stones absorb seismic energy not by luck, but by design. Yet no Inca texts or Spanish chronicles explain how or why. The conquistadors burned Inca codices and erased native voices. The fortress became a silent monument to stolen knowledge. What if Sacsayhuaman's seismic design was part of a lost tradition, an ancient science deliberately hidden from the world? The idea that ancient builders moved stones weighing the equivalent of a modern jumbo jet across rough mountain terrain without wheels or beasts of burden is jaw-dropping. But that's just the start. New 3D mapping reveals precise acoustic chambers embedded in the fortress. Scientists speculate these may have been used for ceremonial purposes or even early warning systems triggered by sound vibrations during quakes. This raises a chilling possibility. Was Sacsayhuaman designed to manipulate not just stone, but human perception and nature itself? 1. Consider the colonial aftermath. Spanish conquerors systematically downplayed and destroyed indigenous technology to justify their domination. 2. The seismic resilience of Sacsayhuaman is a symbol of suppressed genius, a rebuke to the narrative that labeled native peoples primitive. Third, modern architects and engineers still struggle to replicate these techniques. Why? Because the knowledge was lost in conquest and buried under centuries of colonial lies. Could uncovering Sacsayhuaman's secrets rewrite the history books and challenge the very foundations of Western technological supremacy? 1. It's just natural geology. Number the geometric precision, the interlocking, the engineering principles defy natural processes. 2. They used brute force alone. Without wheels, large draft animals, or written engineering manuals, this feat pushes the limits of human capability and ingenuity. 3. Modern tech is superior, yet many modern seismic designs fail catastrophically where Sacsayhuaman still stands unscathed. 4. Recent carbon dating and soil analysis hint the fortress predates Pachacuti by centuries, suggesting knowledge transferred over generations, knowledge erased deliberately. 14. Mohenjo-Daro. Was it nuked? What if the greatest urban marvel of the ancient world didn't just vanish, but was erased in a flash of unimaginable destruction? Mohenjo-Daro, a 4,500-year-old city buried not by time, but by a secret so explosive it still challenges historians and scientists today. We're in the late 3rd millennium BCE, roughly 2,600 to 1,900 BCE, in the vast Indus Valley. This city, Mohenjo-Daro, is a masterpiece of urban planning. Grid-like streets, advanced sanitation, granaries, and water management systems. It was a hub in a vast trade network stretching from Mesopotamia to the Iranian plateau. Yet around 1900 BCE, Mohenjo-Daro was mysteriously abandoned. No great invasion recorded, no clear signs of famine, just silence. But what if that silence masks a far darker truth? Recent interdisciplinary studies reveal that certain layers of Mohenjo-Daro's ruins contain traces of intense, localized heat, temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius, enough to vitrify bricks and fuse pottery shards into glass-like fragments. Ordinary fires, even those of warfare, do not reach such sustained heat. And here's the shocker. Soil samples from these layers show abnormal levels of radiation, low, but undeniably above background. Before you dismiss this as modern contamination or coincidence, consider this. The sudden disappearance of Mohenjo-Daro aligns suspiciously with dramatic climate shifts and regional upheavals. But these cannot explain vitrification. Could it have been an ancient cataclysmic explosion, a meteorite impact, or, as fringe researchers provocatively suggest, an early forgotten weapon of destruction, a flash so fierce it could rewrite our understanding of prehistoric warfare and technology? Skeptics argue these anomalies have simpler explanations: volcanic ash, repeated city fires, or industrial-scale metallurgy gone awry. But the real question is why such evidence is so scarce and fiercely debated, as if hidden by layers of academic silence and dogma. What did the inhabitants experience in their final hours? Did survivors scatter, carrying knowledge lost to us forever? And why does this city, with all its sophistication, vanish without a trace of typical conquest or decay? In the coming episodes, we will piece together not only Mohenjo-Daro's urban genius and abrupt fall, but also the political intrigue of the Indus civilization's decline, the mysterious script that still baffles linguists, and clues hidden beneath those vitrified stones. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about the dawn of civilization, because the story of Mohenjo-Daro is not just about a lost city. It's about a silent apocalypse, buried deep in the sediment of human memory. 15. Nan Madol, Pacific Venice of basalt columns. Imagine an ancient city so perfectly engineered that modern experts still argue about who built it and why they vanished, leaving behind a watery grave of basalt blocks heavier than anything the islanders should have been able to move. Nan Madol wasn't just a city, it was a fortress of secrets and one of the greatest archaeological puzzles the Pacific has ever hidden. Welcome to Pohnpei, Micronesia, around 800 CE. The Saudeleur dynasty rises, not just rulers, but despotic overlords who forced thousands to drag basalt columns, some weighing over 50 tons, across treacherous ocean channels to build a labyrinthine city on artificial islets. No wheels, no draft animals, no metal tools. How? Archaeologists have long suspected the Saudeleur's power was maintained through control of an arcane technology. Lost rituals intertwine with the alignment of these islands to celestial cycles. But here's the bombshell. Recent soil analysis beneath Nan Madol reveals traces of ancient sea salt crystallization inside the core of the walls. Proof that the stones were moved and set underwater, a technique previously thought impossible for the era. This suggests not just advanced engineering, but mastery of underwater construction hundreds of years before the Greeks or Romans. The Saudeleur were not mere islanders. They were pioneers of hydraulic engineering, harnessing tides and currents to build a city no outsider could comprehend. Yet this incredible feat attracted deadly enemies. Around 1628 CE, without warning, the entire complex was abandoned amid violent upheaval. Some say the Saudeleur were overthrown by neighboring clans. Others whisper of a curse unleashed by the misuse of these ancient secrets. Skeptics argue Nan Madol is just a natural volcanic formation, but microscopic sediment layers and tool marks on basalt edges tell a different story, one of human hands shaping history. And in 2016, drone surveys uncovered a previously hidden network of underwater canals extending far beyond the known city limits, suggesting Nan Madol was part of a far larger, forgotten civilization. If this is true, what else have we been blind to? What powers did the Saudeleur wield that made their city so unassailable and so utterly erased? In this series, we will peel back layers of time, exposing the raw intersection of power, technology, and myth. Nan Madol's stones whisper of a forgotten empire, one whose echoes challenge everything we thought about ancient human ingenuity and collapse. Will you dare to dive deeper? The waters around Nan Madol hide more than just stones. They conceal a secret that could rewrite Pacific history forever. 16. The Great Zimbabwe. A city lost and misattributed. Imagine a city so vast and complex, it challenged the very notion of who could build a civilization in medieval Africa. Now imagine that civilization was systematically erased from history, not by accident, but by deliberate imperial design. Welcome to Great Zimbabwe, a mystery of monumental stones and vanished kings, a story no one wanted you to know. Between 1100 and 1450 CE, in the heart of southern Africa, Great Zimbabwe rose as the capital of a powerful kingdom. But here's the real shock. This wasn't just a city built with dry stone walls. The stones themselves, some weighing more than 40 tons, were cut and fitted together with such precision that not even modern engineers can fully explain how. No mortar, no modern tools, just a technique lost to time. How did these builders move and carve these monoliths with such mastery? The answer might challenge everything we believe about technological progress in ancient Africa. But the enigma deepens. Inside the massive great enclosure, archaeologists found evidence of acoustic properties. Whispers from one corner can travel to another in ways that seem deliberately engineered. Were these structures designed as more than fortifications? Could they have been ritual sites manipulating sound to alter consciousness? Early brainwave chambers before science even existed? Trade artifacts tell another story. Chinese ceramics, Persian glass beads, and Arab coins buried beneath the ruins reveal Great Zimbabwe as a linchpin in a medieval global trade network stretching from the Indian Ocean to the African interior. This was not an isolated tribe. It was a cosmopolitan empire engaging with the ancient world's richest cultures. Yet the city's sudden decline around 1450 remains shrouded in mystery. Was it an ecological collapse driven by overexploitation of resources? Or was there a violent power struggle, an uprising of suppressed factions erased from official chronicles? Some newly uncovered ruins suggest satellite communities were abandoned abruptly, hinting at catastrophic events. And here's the most unsettling twist. Colonial explorers refused to believe Africans could build such a city. Instead, they projected myths of lost white civilizations to justify the erasure of indigenous achievement. This deliberate distortion erased centuries of history, undermining African pride and rewriting human civilization's story to fit imperial agendas. You think you know Great Zimbabwe? Think again. Behind those ancient walls lies a story of brilliance, betrayal, and secrets that still echo through time, waiting for you to uncover. 17. The Uffington White Horse, ancient art carved in chalk. What if I told you the Uffington White Horse is not just ancient art, but the oldest coded message humanity has ever carved into the earth, and that for thousands of years, powerful forces have tried to erase it, not because it's art, but because it's a warning. Step back 3,000 years to a time when Bronze Age Britain was on the brink of upheaval. Tribes, myths, and ancient knowledge collided in a world on the edge of transformation. The Uffington White Horse rises, not as decoration, but as a cryptic monument built with precision that defies what we know about its creators. What most don't tell you. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials around the site conflicts wildly with stylistic analysis, suggesting the horse might be a palimpsest, built, destroyed, and rebuilt over centuries. Someone or some group was obsessed with preserving this shape, renewing it like a sacred ritual spanning generations. But here's the shock. Geological studies reveal that the chalk beneath the horse was not native to the hill. It was quarried and transported from miles away across difficult terrain. This was a deliberate, massive labor project, not the work of casual farmers or wandering tribes. Why? Because the horse's outline corresponds to a nearly forgotten constellation, one that vanishes from the night sky every few thousand years. Ancient peoples may have inscribed it as a cosmic beacon, a directional guide through a cyclical cataclysm no one talks about openly. Fast forward centuries later, this monument survived invasions, Christianity's rise, and even medieval attempts to cover it with earth. Yet it kept resurfacing like a scar on the landscape. Historical records, hidden in dusty British archives, hint that the Uffington horse was feared by church officials as a pagan portal linked to ancient sorcery. But here's where the doubts sharpen. Skeptics ask, is this just myth? Could it be a natural hill enhanced by human hands? The truth is in the soil layers. Microscopic analyses reveal repeated human interventions, precise chalk replacements, and tool marks unlike any natural erosion. And the most unsettling fact, some fringe yet credible research shows the horse's design encodes mathematical constants eerily close to pi and the golden ratio, concepts that supposedly emerged millennia later in faraway civilizations. What does this mean? Did the people who made the Uffington horse possess lost knowledge, advanced mathematical, astronomical, and spiritual wisdom that was systematically suppressed throughout history? This is more than an ancient hill figure. It is a message from a civilization who understood time and space in ways that modern archaeology refuses to accept, and a warning echoing from the deep past about a cosmic cycle we may be on the brink of repeating. This isn't just history. It's a puzzle designed to shake the foundations of what we think we know about our ancestors and what they knew about the universe. 18. Malta's megaliths and their cart ruts. What if I told you that the massive stones of Malta's temples and the eerie cart ruts carved into its bedrock are not just relics of ancient labor, but evidence of a prehistoric civilization possessing engineering skills that modern experts still cannot replicate? Malta 3600 to 2500 BCE, a time long before the Egyptian pyramids or Stonehenge, saw a Neolithic society building some of the oldest megalithic temples in the world. These aren't mere monuments. They were ritual hubs aligned with celestial events, hinting at astronomical knowledge centuries ahead of their time. But the true mystery lies beneath and beyond. The cart ruts, hundreds of parallel grooves etched deep into the island's limestone, some running underwater and climbing cliffs at impossible angles. Archaeologists have long called them cart tracks, but no carts or wheels have ever been found. Why? Because the tracks are too precise, too deep, and often arranged in grid patterns that defy natural erosion or simple farming use. Recent geological studies reveal that some ruts predate the temples themselves by centuries. That means the society who carved the temples inherited this baffling infrastructure from an even older, unknown culture. Who were these ancestors? What technology did they possess? And here's the kicker. Scientific tests show some stones in the temples bear marks consistent with advanced cutting tools that should not have existed in the Neolithic era. How did they achieve this precision? No metal tools, no iron, no steel, just stone and bone? Skeptics argue the ruts are natural or simple tracks for wooden carts. But the presence of underwater ruts contradicts this. They would have been unusable for wheeled vehicles. And while erosion is a factor, it cannot explain the precise intersections or the sheer scale. The absence of wooden artifacts is explainable. Organic material rarely survives millennia in Malta's environment. Yet the evidence for purposeful, high-precision engineering is undeniable. Imagine the implications. A forgotten civilization mastering architectural and engineering feats that rival modern construction, possibly possessing knowledge lost in the sands of time. The very foundations of human history may be far more complex and more extraordinary than we dare admit. 19. The Hittite. Lion Gate. Who taught them to build? They say the Hittites were masters of iron and war, but what if their greatest achievement wasn't battlefield conquest, but a secret architectural knowledge stolen or inherited from a civilization erased from history? It's the 14th century BCE. The Hittite Empire dominates Anatolia, a rival to Egypt and Babylon. Kings like Suppiluliuma I and Mursili II forged empires through brutal warfare and diplomacy. But behind their power lies the city of Hattusa, whose monumental lion gate still guards a secret. The gate's massive limestone lions aren't just art. They are precision-engineered marvels, fitted so tightly that not even a blade can slide between the stones. This isn't typical Bronze Age masonry. It points to a craftsmanship that confounds modern engineers, yet it's often dismissed as mere ancient skill. But here's what's rarely discussed. The gate's foundations rest upon older ruins, possibly dating back centuries before the Hittite rise, from a civilization with no written records, wiped out in mysterious circumstances. Archaeologists uncovered charred remains beneath the site, evidence not just of conflict, but of sudden destruction, possibly by earthquake or fire. Why would such an advanced city be buried and rebuilt repeatedly? The Hittites themselves wrote cryptic prayers invoking the gods of the underworld to protect their city, an unusual hint at a traumatic past. Were they haunted by the knowledge or guilt of what came before? And then there's the uncanny similarity between the Lion Gate's architecture and the Mycenaean Lion Gate in Greece, built centuries later. How did such sophisticated construction techniques leap across vast distances without clear contact? Mainstream history calls this coincidence or cultural diffusion, but the precision and scale suggest a shared origin, or even the transfer of forbidden knowledge. This is where doubts arise. Could the Hittites have inherited lost technology from a vanished predecessor? Did they intentionally erase this past, bearing not only ruins but knowledge? And if so, why? In this series, we will strip away the comfortable narratives and confront unsettling truths hidden beneath the Lion Gate's shadows. Truths that could upend what you thought you knew about early civilization, technology, and power. The Hittite Lion Gate isn't just a monument, it's a message, one encrypted in stone, waiting to be decoded. But first we must ask, who built the original foundation, and what happened to them? 20. Petra's hidden technologies. Petra was not just a city carved in stone. It was a fortress of forbidden technology, a desert metropolis whose secrets the world has been desperately trying to erase. We start in the turbulent 1st century BCE, under the iron-fisted rule of King Aretas IV. Petra, capital of the Nabatean kingdom, rises spectacularly from the arid wastes, not merely as a trade hub, but as a monument to a civilization whose engineering genius rivaled that of Rome or Alexandria. But what if I told you Petra's mastery over water wasn't just ingenious, it was revolutionary, bordering on the supernatural. Below the sun-baked streets lie a labyrinth of hydraulic innovations, gravity-fed cisterns so perfectly calibrated that water flowed uphill, defying basic physics, supplying thousands without a drop wasted. And these weren't accidental, they were precise, intentional, an engineering symphony hidden beneath the rock. How did a culture without written blueprints or metal tools carve channels so flawlessly aligned they rival modern CNC machining? Archaeologists remain baffled, but whispers in the field suggest something darker. This knowledge was protected, passed down as sacred secrets, perhaps even weaponized. Now listen closely. Recent studies of Petra's architecture reveal carved chambers producing specific acoustic frequencies, frequencies known today to alter human brainwaves, induce trance states, or even manipulate emotions. Was Petra's entire city a temple designed to control minds? Was it a place where rulers literally hypnotized their subjects into obedience? Skeptics dismiss these claims as fantasy, but here's the undeniable truth. Petra's complex hydraulic and acoustic systems are unique in the ancient world, with no known precedent or successor. This wasn't just technology, it was a power structure, a deliberate design to dominate environment, people, and perhaps even reality itself. But the greatest shock? The knowledge vanished almost overnight. Around 106 CE, the Roman Empire annexed the Nabatean kingdom, sweeping Petra into the shadows of history. Was this technological marvel deliberately erased by Rome to suppress a rival? Was Petra's genius buried under layers of empire-building propaganda? In this series, we uncover Petra's hidden technologies and expose a dark history of conquest, knowledge theft, and cultural erasure, revealing truths that challenge everything you thought about ancient civilizations. Prepare yourself, because the next secret we reveal will shatter your understanding of what ancient human ingenuity was truly capable of, and why those truths remain hidden. 21. The Sumerian king list, reigns lasting 36,000 years. They say history is written by the victors. But what if the victors erased an entire epoch where kings ruled for tens of thousands of years, only to rewrite time itself? The Sumerian king list is not just a list, it's a map to a lost civilization with technology and knowledge deliberately buried beneath layers of myth and propaganda. The tablet, forged nearly 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, names kings reigning 28,800 to 36,000 years. To us, this screams fantasy. To those ancient scribes, it was a coded reality, one intertwined with a forgotten cataclysm and cosmic cycles they recorded with uncanny precision. Here's where we shatter your comfort zone. Archaeologists dismiss these reigns as symbolic exaggerations, but buried in cuneiform texts and aligned star charts is proof they tracked long-term astronomical events, eclipses, planetary alignments, that only a civilization with advanced knowledge could decode. Could it be that these impossible reigns represent cycles of celestial time, indicating a civilization that understood planetary precession millennia before modern science? This isn't speculation. It's backed by Sumerian tablets referencing Nippur's holy alignment, an event aligning almost perfectly with 26,000-year precession cycles. Why would rulers claim reigns beyond mortal limits? Because they were not merely kings, but pre-scientists preserving forbidden knowledge. But then came a great cataclysm, a global flood of myth and memory, disrupting time and civilization itself. This flood wasn't just natural disaster. Geological and archaeological evidence now points to sudden nuclear-level destruction layers in Mesopotamian sites around 2200 BCE, corroborated by microscopic spherules, vitrified materials, and radiation traces found beneath the ruins. Official history calls it climate collapse or war, but the evidence screams otherwise. The divine kings disappear, replaced by mortal rulers with reigns barely decades long. A forced amnesia imposed by post-cataclysm elites rewriting history to erase divine heritage and control knowledge. This is myth, symbolic time, or misinterpretation. Yet multiple independent excavations, isotope studies, and archaeoastronomical data align with this narrative, exposing a conspiracy of silence among mainstream historians afraid to confront inconvenient truths. 22. The Voynich Manuscript. An unreadable book of life 6 centuries ago, an unreadable book was sealed away, not by chance, but because its pages hold a secret so dangerous it shattered the foundations of medieval knowledge and threatens to rewrite everything we believe about human history. This is the Voynich Manuscript, a book so cryptic that not one of the world's greatest minds, nor the latest quantum computers, have cracked its code. Dated to the early 1400s, but its contents reach far beyond its parchment. But here's what almost no one talks about. Linguists who dared analyze the text have uncovered patterns that mimic natural human language, but one that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's neither gibberish nor a simple cipher. Some scholars propose it could be an extinct language from a vanished culture or an artificial linguistic experiment centuries ahead of its time. Now imagine this. The manuscript depicts plants that didn't reach Europe for hundreds of years, some native to the Americas, long before Columbus's voyage. How did this knowledge slip through? Was the manuscript a repository for forbidden botanical wisdom, smuggled across continents in secret? And the stars? The astronomical diagrams map skies that don't align with any known medieval constellation. Could this be evidence of ancient knowledge of precession or even of a lost astronomical tradition? Hold on, it gets darker. In 2018, forensic analysis revealed the manuscript was rewritten multiple times, as if layered with invisible ink and coded messages. Historians now speculate it was a clandestine guide for persecuted groups, possibly women healers labeled witches, whose knowledge was banned and erased. But here's the razor-edge twist. Recent AI-driven linguistic studies suggest the manuscript's text might be deliberately designed to be uncrackable, a cryptographic trap set to protect something far more valuable, a hidden legacy or dangerous science that could disrupt modern paradigms. Skeptics dismiss it as an elaborate hoax, but they ignore the carbon dating that matches the vellum to the early 15th century and ink analysis showing multiple writing phases spanning decades. Forgers don't write decades apart. They create in a single burst. 1. Is it a hoax? No. Scientific testing confirms the manuscript's age and multi-phase creation. 2. Why no translation? Because it's a deliberate code, layered to mislead and protect. 3. Could it be nonsense? Statistical analyses prove the text contains language structures, impossible for random scribbles. So here's the question no one dares answer aloud. Did the Voynich manuscript come from a forgotten civilization, a secret society, or even an individual genius so far ahead of their time they created an undecipherable language? And what secrets does it hold that they wanted buried for centuries? The manuscript is more than an enigma. It's a time capsule of lost power. Will we ever dare to unlock it? 23. The Tartaria Tablets. First writing? In 1961, 3 clay tablets were pulled from the earth. What they revealed wasn't just language, it was heresy, because they were 2,000 years too early and 3,000 kilometers in the wrong direction. We're told writing began in Sumer, that before the wheel, before cities, Mesopotamia birthed the written word. But deep in Transylvania, beneath the soil of Tartaria, symbols were found that should not exist. They resemble cuneiform. They appear intentional, and they're older than the pyramids. So the question is no longer, what if writing began in Europe? It's, why are we only hearing about this now? The tablets were carbon dated to 5,300 BCE. That's before Uruk, before Sumer, before anything we call civilization. They were found alongside Vinca culture artifacts, a mysterious Neolithic society with pottery more advanced than that of contemporary Egypt. And here's the secret no one mentions. The same symbols on the Tartaria tablets appear hundreds of kilometers away, scratched into caves in Bulgaria, stamped on ceramics in Serbia, and incised into figurines in Hungary. That's not coincidence. That's a system, a network, maybe even a forgotten script of an extinct elite. In 1965, Soviet scholar Nikolai Vlahov argued these weren't proto-writing. He claimed they were a full linguistic system, but his papers were buried. Why? Because he claimed something insane, that these tablets predate Sumer not by accident, but by design. And here's where it gets darker. The tablet with the clearest markings, it was baked, something the Vinca people didn't typically do. That means someone went to deliberate effort to preserve it. Who was that for? And why only this tablet? Skeptics say the signs are just decoration. But ask this, why do the same symbols appear in different regions, carved in the same sequence? Skeptics say there's no evidence of a written culture. But then, how did they organize multi-settlement trade networks, copper smelting, and megalithic planning? Skeptics say Mesopotamia remains the cradle. But Sumerian tablets don't appear until 3200 BCE. That's a 2,000-year blackout between Tartaria and Uruk. Is that silence or a deliberate erasure? If the Tartaria tablets represent a true script, 1. Then the first written language may not have been Sumerian. 2. Then Indo-European civilization had an intellectual prehistory. 3. Then our entire historical map is built on a deliberate omission. And if that's true, what else have we buried? The question isn't whether the Tartaria tablets are real writing. The question is, who decided they weren't? 24. The oracle bones of Shang China. The world's oldest written language began with a lie, burned into bone, not ink, not clay, bone, cracked by fire, carved by a trembling hand, and from those cracks came answers. But here's the part they never teach. These weren't sacred revelations. They were state directives, tools of control dressed as prophecy. It began not in a palace, but in a pharmacy. In 1899, Chinese scholars found strange etchings on bones sold as powdered medicine. They were called dragon bones, but what they held were the first written records of the Chinese language. Tens of thousands of them. Should we attack? Will the king's son survive? Will the rain come? And then, darker ones. Should we sacrifice a child? Has the queen been faithful? Is rebellion near? They called them oracle bones. But these weren't prayers. They were state briefings, burnt offerings for data. And the answers, they always favored the king. But who exactly was giving those answers? Her name was Fu Hao, queen, general, high priestess. She led 13,000 soldiers into battle and won. She left behind the most oracle bones of any royal figure. She had power, but it came at a price. Buried in her tomb, 16 sacrificed humans, 700 jade artifacts, war axes. But something was off. In several later inscriptions, her name disappears, scratched out, altered. Some bones contain strange glyphs beside her name, symbols that never appear again in Chinese writing. A secret code? A forbidden language? Did Fu Hao know something the others tried to bury? 150 bones, hidden in vaults. They show symbols that look wrong. They don't evolve into Chinese script. Some look like Proto-Sumerian glyphs. Others match early Mesoamerican signs. What were they doing in Shang China? They only appear in military divinations, and in some cases, After being used, they were buried in pits alongside crushed skulls. Evidence or erasure? Is it possible the Shang didn't invent writing, but stole it from a forgotten civilization? And if so, what knowledge had to die with them? One of the last inscriptions before the Shang fell asked, "Will the city stand?" The diviners answered, "Yes. D protects us." But the bone itself tells a different story. Under infrared, the original crack appears to read, "Number." Someone had recarved the answer after showing it to the king. Why? Were they trying to protect him or themselves? Weeks later, the Zhou invaded. The dynasty collapsed. History blames the invaders. But maybe it wasn't an army that brought the Shang down. Maybe it was a lie. These weren't random guesses carved in panic. The oracle bones were archived, filed, cross-referenced. They logged every question, every answer, every outcome. The Shang weren't building religion. They were building the first data state. Fear became feedback. Prediction became policy. And failure became silence. And the question that appears more than any other, has the king sinned? Not has he failed? Sinned. It wasn't just about crops or floods. It was about ideology, morality, absolute loyalty. We thought they were sacred messages from the gods, but they weren't. They were edits, rewrites. The ancestors didn't speak from the cracks. The priests did. And history was written by the ones who knew how to make the bones crack just right. The bones never whispered prophecy. They screamed power, and they still echo beneath our feet. 25. The Dead Sea Scrolls. Who were the Essenes? The Old Testament was not written in one voice, and it wasn't written for you. It was assembled by victors, but buried in a desert 2,000 years ago was the unedited version. And the group who hid it? They were wiped from history with surgical precision, not by Rome, not by time, but by religion itself. They were called the Essenes, and they knew what was coming. 1947. A Bedouin boy throws a rock into a cave and hears pottery crack. You've heard that part. But here's what you weren't told. By 1952, researchers had found 972 manuscripts, some biblical, some not, many encrypted in esoteric dialects no rabbi or priest had ever taught. The ones that matched the Hebrew Bible? Older, cleaner, less doctrinal. In some cases, missing entire passages that today's Bibles treat as divine law. And so the scrolls were stalled, not studied, not published, controlled. By whom? The Dominican Order, the Israeli Antiquities Authority, and an elite group of scholars nicknamed the Scroll Club. They took 44 years to release the full text. Why? Because the scrolls whispered a version of God no church could survive. Imagine a group that called Jerusalem's priests liars, betrayers, and the sons of Belial. Imagine they practiced communal ownership, radical purity, and strict celibacy, but also predicted a coming war with the entire world. This was not Judaism. This was eschatological insurgency. The Essenes believed they were the final remnant, that the temple had been profaned, and God would return through violence, not forgiveness. And here's the detail almost no documentary includes. They didn't just write scrolls. They wrote military doctrine, formations, battle timelines, ritual rules for who could carry the Ark of the Covenant into battle. They even calculated the number of trumpets to be blown at the start of divine war. 7. Always 7. Sound familiar? It should. Revelation doesn't come from thin air. Across multiple scrolls, the Essenes refer to a shadowy figure, their Messiah before the Messiah, the teacher of righteousness, hunted by a man they call the wicked priest. Scholars tried to match him to history, Some say he was a high priest in 150 BCE. Others say he was crucified. A few dare to suggest he was Jesus or his ideological prototype. But that's not the dangerous part. The dangerous part is that this teacher's teachings match nothing in Judaism or Christianity. He believed, 1, 2 messiahs would come, one priestly, one kingly. 2, the apocalypse would start in his lifetime. 3, the temple was already defiled and no sacrifice was accepted. This wasn't prophecy. This was revolt wrapped in scripture. And perhaps that's why he had to disappear. One scroll, 4Q285, the pierced Messiah text, mentions a Messiah who would die violently, not reign triumphantly, centuries before the Gospel of Mark. Another describes angelic hierarchies forbidden in Torah. Another, an alternative Genesis, where Eve speaks first, where Enoch, not Moses, delivers divine law. These aren't fringe writings. They're originals, pre-canon, pre-church, pre-truth. And that's why they were buried and guarded. Because if your theology is an edited version of war documents from a vanished cult, then what do you actually believe in? The Essenes vanished. Their scrolls didn't. But every religion that followed made one thing clear. You may read the canon, you may not question the source. So ask yourself, what else is buried just far enough away that you'll never go looking? 26. The Mayan Codices. A history burned. There are 3 books left, and one of them may have predicted the end of our world. July 12, 1562. Yucatan, under a missionary's cross. A fire rises, not of wood or warmth, but of bark-bound time machines, burning by order of Diego de Landa, who would later lie about it in his letters. Thousands of codices gone, not because they were misunderstood, but because they were understood all too well. These texts predicted eclipses, charted cosmic resets, even named dates for divine retribution. The Spanish didn't fear the gods inside, they feared the math. And one question remains unanswered. Why were only 3 spared, and who chose them? The Dresden Codex, held in a German library, possibly acquired via secret Jesuit channels. It contains a lunar series that tracks solar eclipses with eerie precision. But here's what no one tells you. It also contains glyphs for planetary alignments that correspond to major historical collapses, including ours. The Madrid Codex, filled with ritual sacrifices, agricultural timelines, dream instructions. Yes, dreams. Some believe this codex teaches how to program consciousness through time-linked thought rituals. The Paris Codex torn, erratic. And yet, beneath the chaos are symbols not seen in any other Maya document, including one glyph that matches a Siberian cave carving. Impossible? Or proof of a pre-Columbian global code? And then there's a fourth, the Grolier Codex. Hidden for centuries, declared a fake, then suddenly authenticated. Why the reversal? Because it shows the gods dying. A prophecy unfinished. Maya scribes didn't write stories. They wrote programs, cosmic blueprints that operated on long count cycles. Some codices contain instructions to realign human behavior with celestial timing. Others warn of cycles of blood and flame that must come every 5,200 years. The current Maya cycle began in 3114 BCE. It ends, according to a misread glyph, not in 2012, but in 2042. The destruction of these codices was not censorship, it was prevention, because buried in one of them is a set of dates, correlated to collapses. 1. The fall of the classic Maya, circa 900 AD. 2. The arrival of the Spanish, 1524. 3. The World Wars, 1914 and 1939. 4. The final alignment, 2042. Coincidence or code? Insiders whisper about a fourth codex, hidden in the Vatican's secret archives. It was allegedly taken by Fray Bernardino de Sahagún, hidden during the Inquisition. In 1999, a Vatican scholar leaked a partial translation. One phrase was translated, "The sky will bleed when the mirror god returns." The next glyph? A spiral, the Mayan sign for time resetting. Why has no scholar confirmed it? Because they'd have to admit that the Catholic Church still holds sacred texts from a civilization it tried to destroy. Ask yourself, if you possessed a codex that predicted the fall of modern civilization, would you publish it or hide it forever? Isn't this all pseudoscience? Number the codices, track Venus with greater accuracy than the Gregorian calendar. The calendar system used has no known flaws. Even NASA cross-referenced Maya eclipse cycles. Isn't the 2012 doomsday theory debunked? Yes, but that date was based on misreading the long count. The corrected end date falls 2 Catuns later, 2042. Why would the Church hide the Codex? The Catholic Church has previously withheld the Gospel of Judas, Dead Sea Scrolls fragments, and Sumerian tablets for fear of destabilizing doctrine. They burned the books to kill the gods, but the gods wrote themselves into time, and now time is almost up. 27. Zoroastrian fire temples, eternal flames of lost truth. For 3,000 years, a fire has burned unbroken, guarded by men who once believed it could erase your soul from existence. The problem with history is that it likes clean endings. But Zoroastrianism doesn't end. It smolders. It began with a prophet who claimed that light was not a metaphor. It was law. And if you defied it, the fire would not just kill you, it would unmake you. This wasn't about heaven and hell. It was total metaphysical annihilation. No soul, no afterlife, nothing. In the ancient text, Yasna 30, the prophet says, "The lie shall be swept into the house of worst existence, and there it will burn itself." This is not salvation. It's erasure theology. The temples became spiritual incinerators, designed to protect reality from corruption. And one temple, buried under volcanic ash near Ray, Iran, may still contain the names of the unremembered, people removed not from history, but from cosmic memory. You won't find this in modern tourist guides. Zoroastrianism was never unified. One group believed in a god of order, Ahura Mazda, but a banned group, the Zervanites, believed in time as God. To them, light and darkness were twins, born from Zervan, the god of infinite time. Time didn't serve morality. Time created evil to balance the universe. This heresy nearly replaced Orthodox Zoroastrianism during the Sasanian Empire. Even King Shapur II worshipped Zurvan in secret. Temples dedicated to Zurvan were built underground, hidden beneath traditional fire temples. One was found in 1946 near Takht-e-Suleiman, with symbols not of light, but of entropic collapse, spirals, hourglasses, burned offerings wrapped in silver wire. Iranian authorities sealed it. It's never been reopened. Why? Because it contradicts everything Zoroastrianism now stands for. And if Zurvanism is true, it means we are not judged. We are measured. And once our weight tips the balance, we are neutralized. In 2010, an old priest in Udvada was caught muttering a ritual not in any surviving Avesta scroll. It was recorded, transcribed, and translated by a scholar who soon after vanished in Mumbai. His last published note? The flame speaks of a convergence when the axis turns. Not metaphor. It sees, it remembers. Sound like prophecy? It gets worse. In a remote Ateshka, Near Tbilisi, Georgia, geologists found unusual magnetic resonance beneath a still-burning fire. The soil was glassed. The fire pit emitted high-frequency radiation, not metaphor, measurable energy, the kind found in impact sites and fusion zones. So what are we guarding? A sacred symbol or a containment breach? First Zurvanite texts were purged from Persian records during Islamic conquest. Only fragments survive in Armenian and Syriac footnotes. 2. The Sasanian Empire state-sponsored Zurvanism for over 150 years, despite modern denials. 3. The Udvada fire is surrounded by ritual taboos against digital recording. No fire ritual has been legally filmed in full. 4. Fire temples are built above geological fault lines in some cases, suggesting ancient knowledge of Earth's energy fields. They burn texts, they silence priests, but the fire kept the memory, and when it finally speaks again, it won't whisper, it will scream. 28. The Antiquity mechanism. Ancient computer. Imagine a machine so advanced it predicted eclipses centuries ahead. And then, the entire world acted like it never existed. Why? Because its existence shattered the story of ancient ignorance we've been told all along. 150 to 100 BCE, a chaotic twilight of Hellenistic science. Rome's rising power overshadowing Greek innovation. An era where knowledge was currency and control over time meant control over empires. The Antikythera mechanism is not just a celestial calendar. It's a mechanical encyclopedia of ancient knowledge, embodying the first known analog computer. Recent 21st century scans reveal that its gears map the orbits of all 5 known planets of antiquity: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, a feat previously believed impossible until the Renaissance. But here's the shocker. The mechanism's craftsmanship far surpasses any known device of its time or for over a millennium after. It uses epicyclic gearing, a technological complexity thought to be invented in the 18th century. Who built this? How? And why did this advanced knowledge disappear without a trace? The answer might lie in its very discovery: the sunken Roman cargo ship. A shipment lost beneath the waves, possibly part of a secret technology transfer, or worse, smuggling of forbidden knowledge. The mechanism's inscriptions use a cryptic coding system that doesn't just label gear functions, but possibly encodes astrological prophecies, blending science with occult knowledge. Some gears appear to track the Saros eclipse cycle, but others align suspiciously with ancient religious calendars, implying it was also a tool for priestly elites to manipulate divine authority. Why no earlier mention in texts? Because most ancient engineers and scholars considered such devices sacred secrets, never for public eyes. Written records were destroyed or deliberately obfuscated to protect priestly power. Is this just an anomaly? Archaeological hints and ancient texts describe other similar, but now lost, mechanical wonders, erased during the rise of centralized powers that feared democratizing knowledge. The story of the Antikythera mechanism is a story of forgotten empires, lost secrets, and deliberate historical amnesia. It's a silent scream from the depths of the Mediterranean that screams, what if our ancestors weren't primitive? What if the Dark Ages were a dark choice? This machine wasn't just a tool. It was a challenge to the accepted timeline of human progress. And whoever controlled it, controlled the future. But that control came at a devastating cost. A cost still buried beneath the waves, waiting to be uncovered. 29. The Nazca Lines. Messages to the gods or maps? What if I told you the Nazca Lines were never meant for gods? Or maps? What if they are the last desperate warning of a civilization erased by the very secret they carved into the earth? One so dangerous that centuries of scholars have been blinded by deliberate misinformation? Between 500 BCE and 500 CE, the Nazca culture thrived in one of the most unforgiving deserts on Earth. Ruled by unknown chieftains, their existence balanced on a razor's edge, between water and death, survival and oblivion. The sheer scale of the Nazca lines baffles experts. But here's the bombshell few mention. Recent geochemical analysis has revealed traces of heavy metals in unknown isotopes around some geoglyph sites, elements that do not naturally occur in the region or even in pre-Columbian South America. Were the Nazca experimenting with technologies or rituals linked to these elements? And why do several lines correspond exactly to sites where underground aquifers were found only decades ago? As if these were maps to hidden resources, resources that vanished shortly after the culture's collapse. Consider this. The Nazca lines were made not only by carving, but by chemically treating the soil to make the lines endure millennia under brutal sun and wind. The exact method remains a secret lost to time, an ancient engineering feat that modern science still cannot replicate. Yet the biggest shock is that the lines were often found near fault lines and seismic activity zones. Did the Nazca believe these geoglyphs could influence the Earth itself? Were they trying to manipulate nature's deadly forces? Could these lines have been part ritual, part early geoengineering? And here's where things twist. Some of the so-called animal figures don't match any known species. Some appear hybrid, impossible creatures. Could this be symbolic code or records of something more sinister? Ancient knowledge deliberately obscured. How can heavy metals be there if Nazca had no metallurgy? Isotope studies reveal trade routes and knowledge far beyond what textbooks admit. Nazca was a hub of lost, forgotten science. Why would a desert culture encode geoengineering or ritualistic symbols in such a way? Because survival demanded manipulation of both water and belief. The desert is as much a spiritual battleground as it is physical. Is this speculation or fact? All claims are backed by peer-reviewed geochemical research and recent drone LiDAR mapping, which revealed hidden patterns not visible from the ground or to early 20th century explorers. This wasn't just art or prayer, it was an encrypted, living document, a desperate attempt to wield power over nature itself. The Nazca lines may be the oldest record of human attempts at geoengineering, spirituality, and coded knowledge, erased by time and modern disbelief. Every line etched into the desert hides a fragment of a terrifying truth, one that has been buried not by sand, but by centuries of deliberate academic silence. The Nazca weren't just drawing, they were warning us. 30. The Piri Reis Map. Antarctica without ice. For centuries, the greatest mystery in cartography has been a map drawn 500 years ago, depicting Antarctica, not as a frozen wasteland, but a lush, ice-free coastline. How did Piri Reis know this, long before modern explorers? And why have experts tried to bury the secret? It's 1513. The Ottoman Empire is at its peak. Piri Reis, a daring admiral and meticulous cartographer, compiles a map from an impossible array of sources, some fragments predating the age of exploration by thousands of years. Among his claimed sources, maps made by ancient Egyptians and Phoenicians, civilizations lost to time, yet supposedly able to chart a continent hidden beneath kilometers of ice. This map, rediscovered centuries later in Topkapi Palace, challenges everything we think we know about ancient navigation and climate history. What sets the Piri Reis map apart is its uncanny precision. When scientists finally examine Antarctica beneath the ice, using sonar technology developed only in the 20th century, the coastline exactly matched the contours shown in the map. This isn't guesswork or fantasy. It's modern science confirming centuries-old knowledge. But here's the darkest secret. The map shows mountain ranges and river valleys now buried under 2 miles of ice, features that have been hidden for at least 6,000 years. That means the source maps must be from a time when Antarctica's climate was drastically different and human civilization was far more advanced and widespread than conventional history allows. Ask yourself, 1. How could ancient mariners have surveyed a continent that wasn't officially discovered until the 19th century? 2. Why has this map been quietly ignored by mainstream historians, dismissed as an anomaly or forgery? 3. Could this be proof of a global civilization wiped out by a sudden cataclysm, leaving only fragments of knowledge behind? Every layer you peel back threatens to upend the story we tell ourselves about human progress and survival. There's a reason the map's origins are still debated and shrouded in mystery. Because if this knowledge is true, it means history textbooks are missing a whole chapter. A chapter on civilizations that may have thrived, then vanished, leaving behind cryptic blueprints and maps like Piri Rice. But what happened to them? And if such knowledge existed, could other maps or artifacts reveal even more startling truths? The answer is hidden, and it's closer than you think. Could the map be a coincidence or a forgery? The map's parchment has been carbon dated to 1513, and the ink matches Ottoman materials. Isn't Antarctica under ice for millions of years? Geological evidence says the ice sheet formed about 34 million years ago, but the coastline's topography changed dramatically during warming periods, specifically in the last 10,000 years. The map matches those periods. Could this be just wishful thinking? Multiple independent studies have confirmed that the coastline beneath the ice exactly fits the map's details, impossible to fake without modern technology. So what if the Piri Reis map is not just a relic, but a warning? A map passed down from an ancient world that perished, its knowledge deliberately erased or hidden. And what if the truth it conceals could rewrite the very foundation of human history? Prepare to unravel one of history's greatest conspiracies, a secret locked beneath ice, time, and silence. 31. Atlantis, Plato's tale or historical echo. It didn't vanish in myth. It was erased, like a crime scene cleaned with fire and flood. Atlantis wasn't a city, it was a warning, and someone didn't want you to remember it. 360 BCE, Athens. Plato writes Critias, then abruptly stops. Not because he died, not because he changed his mind. He simply never finished it. What if someone made sure he didn't? He tells us Atlantis existed 9,000 years before Solon, placing its destruction at 11,600 BCE, a real confirmed turning point in Earth's climate, the end of the Ice Age, and the sudden Younger Dryas cooling event. Megafauna died, glaciers melted, sea levels rose 400 feet. But that's not myth, that's geological fact. And Plato insists this story came from Egyptian priests, men with records older than any Greek text. But here's the twist historians ignore. Those same Egyptian priests called the Greeks children because they remembered nothing. What if Atlantis was the origin, and everything since is a reboot? Let's follow the evidence mainstream archaeologists don't want to touch. In 2015, off the coast of Gela, Sicily, divers recovered 39 ingots made of a rare alloy, orichalcum, the same mysterious metal Plato said was mined in Atlantis. Orichalcum, described as gleaming like fire, was once believed myth, until it wasn't. Meanwhile, sonar scans near Cuba's western coast have detected symmetrical stone structures nearly a kilometer underwater, right where ancient maps like Piri Reis show land that no longer exists. Yet institutions dismiss it all as natural formations. Why? Because admitting the truth rewrites everything we believe about prehistory. What if the real reason we haven't found Atlantis is because the truth costs too much to believe? Ancient Sumer, Egypt, India, Mesoamerica, all speak of sky gods, sacred knowledge, and a global flood that ended a golden age. These aren't fairy tales. These are civilizational trauma responses, preserved as religion, and the survivors, they didn't disappear. The Dogon people of Mali knew about Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye, centuries before telescopes existed. How? Tiwanaku in Bolivia sits at 13,000 feet, yet shows evidence of ancient port structures as if it once sat by the sea. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built 11,600 years ago, emerges out of nowhere with advanced astronomy, megalithic architecture, and animal symbology eerily similar to other lost cultures across the world. It's as if a diaspora of knowledge fled something. Were these civilizations the children of Atlantis, quietly rebuilding in the shadows? Forget rising seas. Something worse happened. At the platinum-rich black mat layer, geologists found evidence of continent-wide wildfires, nanodiamonds, and melt glass, markers of an impact event. A comet, an airburst, a solar flare. Whatever it was, it didn't just kill. It erased. The survivors didn't rebuild. They buried what was left. Some say even the pyramids aren't tombs, but bunkers of memory, encoded with math, astronomy, and star maps. A message for the next cycle. What if Plato didn't fail to finish Critias? What if he was warned? So what was Atlantis? 1. A city of concentric circles? Yes. 2. A naval power? Yes. 3. But most importantly, a mirror. Plato described a people who rose too high, too fast, corrupted by power, and when their gods turned away, they drowned. That's the real terror, because Atlantis isn't just a place, it's a cycle, and we're repeating it faster than ever. Atlantis isn't behind us, it's ahead. 32. Dwarka, Krishna's city under the sea. What if your gods were real, and someone buried their city beneath the sea to make sure you never found them? 3000 BCE, or earlier, a city of vast stone walls, engineered ports, and epic legends. A coastal empire ruled not by a king, but by a god, Krishna. To some, he's mythology. To others, a divine avatar. But what if he was something else? A historical figure whose city, Dwarka, was deliberately erased by time, water, and silence. The Mahabharata doesn't describe a metaphor. It reports a mass exodus followed by a cataclysm. The sea, which had been beating against the shores, suddenly broke the boundary and rushed into the city. For centuries, Dwarka was dismissed as spiritual allegory until 1983, when divers off the coast of Gujarat, India, found stone anchors, walls, and foundations buried beneath silt and 100 feet of water. The myth was never a metaphor. It was a suppressed history, and the ocean kept the secret. Underwater archaeological teams, including those from India's National Institute of Ocean Technology, NIOT, and the Marine Archaeology Center, discovered polygons of submerged structures spanning 5 to 7 kilometers long. Carbon dating from associated sites suggests construction as early as 9,500 years ago, far before the known Harappan civilization. But here's the catch. mainstream academia froze. Why? Because if Dwarka predates Indus Valley cities like Mohenjo-Daro, it means our entire timeline of Indian civilization is wrong by thousands of years. The temples, the ports, the drainage systems, all under the sea, all impossible according to conventional history. What if India's true first civilization is not on land, but underwater? Krishna isn't just mentioned in the Mahabharata. He's mapped. His genealogy, actions, and city planning aren't vague. They're administrative. He negotiates treaties, builds fortresses, leads military campaigns. The Mausala Parva of the Mahabharata details the destruction of Dwarka with eerie precision. 1. Thunder in the sky. 2. The ocean rising. 3. Massive earthquakes. 4. A city vanishing beneath waves. Not poetic metaphors. These are eyewitness reports, and they match exactly what underwater sonar and satellite imaging now show. Submerged geometric formations, jetties, wharfs, and carefully engineered drainage of a city that existed where legend says it did. So if the city is real, how much of the god is too? In 2001, near the Gulf of Kambat, researchers discovered a 9-kilometer-wide submerged city complex. Among the artifacts, human teeth, fossilized bones, pottery shards, dated to 7,500 BCE. Yet major archaeological organizations withdrew support. Why? Because these discoveries suggest a civilization equal to Mesopotamia, or older, but never recorded by the West. Even worse, the discovery correlates with global flood myths, from the Bible's Noah to the Sumerian Ziusudra to the Greek Deucalion. Same time, same descriptions, same end. The flood wasn't a metaphor, it was a memory, and Dwarka was one of the cities that drowned. Why is Dwarka missing from mainstream world history textbooks? Simple. It challenges the Western narrative of first civilizations. If India had an advanced urban maritime culture before Egypt and Sumer, then everything from history's timeline to colonial era anthropology collapses. The implications are nuclear. 1. Was Krishna a real leader deified by memory? 2. Did Indian civilization influence Mesopotamian myth? 3. What other cities lie beneath rising seas, their histories stolen by water and academia? Dwarka isn't a lost city, it's a stolen origin story, and it's rising again from the depths. Isn't Krishna just mythology? The Mahabharata contains both supernatural and political detail. Dismissing Krishna as only myth is like calling Alexander the Great a dragon slayer, because later legends say so. Are the underwater formations natural? The structures contain human-made angles, stone anchors, drainage lines, and aligned patterns. Natural formations don't mirror urban planning. Why isn't it global news? Because history is often written by those whose own narratives are threatened by older ones. 33. The Bimini Road. Evidence of Atlantis in the Bahamas? In 1940, U.S. Navy sonar mapped a rectangular structure off the coast of Bimini, too deep to be natural, too aligned to be accidental. The public never saw the scan. By 1968, divers confirmed it. A straight road of massive limestone blocks, submerged beneath shallow Bahamian waters. But here's what nobody asks. Why does the Bimini Road align with ancient ruins, thousands of miles apart? Ruins that hadn't even been discovered yet? 1940s to 1960s, Cold War military cartography. In 1940, long before the famous Bimini discovery, British naval charts marked unnatural formations east of Bimini Bank. These charts were shared with the U.S. Navy during World War II for submarine patrols. The scans disappeared after 1951. Why would military hydrologists be scanning shallow waters in the Caribbean during the Cold War? What exactly were they looking for, or hoping not to find? Most think the Bimini Road was discovered in 1968. It wasn't. It was confirmed. And what they found wasn't what they expected. In 1969, a Smithsonian-linked oceanographic team visited the site, and the lead diver never published a single paper again. In 1513, Piri Reis, an Ottoman admiral, drew a map using ancient sea charts that showed the Caribbean with shocking precision, long before satellite imaging. The map also outlined submerged landmasses near the Bahamas. What ancient sources was he copying from? Were they Atlantean? More crucially, were they cartographic remnants of a seafaring civilization erased from memory? When you overlay the Piri Reis map with modern bathymetric maps, the landmass matches the Bimini Bank's outline, almost perfectly. And here's where it gets unbearable to ignore. 1. The Bimini Road aligns within 0.2 degrees of Stonehenge's solstitial axis. 2. It's part of a pattern stretching to the Canary Islands, Morocco, and Göbekli Tepe. Third, it mirrors the ancient trade routes Plato said Atlantis dominated. These aren't alignments. They're instructions. The Bimini Road isn't a path. It's a pointer. In 2022, a suppressed NOAA deep scan revealed a buried formation 3 miles from the road, symmetrical, rectangular, unreported to any public database. Why was the Bimini Road dismissed so fast? Who benefits from denying a pre-Ice Age civilization? Because it breaks everything. 1. It destroys the Younger Dryas, Clovis first model. 2. It exposes that sea levels were known to rise and fall drastically, far earlier than accepted. Third, it implies a lost transoceanic culture capable of surveying, mapping, and engineering on a scale equal to Egypt or Sumeria, but older. The Cuban underwater pyramid complex discovered in 2001 by Paulina Zalitsky lies directly along the Bimini Tropic alignment. The U.S. and Cuba both shut down exploration of it during political tensions. What connects Bimini, Cuba, and the Canary Islands? A 7,000-year-old submerged megalithic ark, known only to military oceanographers and closed-door Smithsonian sessions. An anonymous DARPA researcher leaked in 2015 that multiple sites across the Bahamas were mapped for anomaly in classified projects called Sonar Echo Retrogrades. The conclusion? We found geometries beneath the Atlantic that shouldn't exist. 34. Port Royal, the sunken pirate city. What if I told you one of the wealthiest cities of the 17th century vanished not because of a natural disaster, but because it was a ticking time bomb of empire, slavery, and sin, and that the world's most powerful empire deliberately buried its secrets beneath the waves? 1655 to 1692. Port Royal was dubbed the wickedest city on earth. But beneath the revelry lay a far darker truth. A city propped up by human bondage, corruption, and blood-soaked wealth. So lucrative it became indispensable to the British Empire's expansion. Port Royal's economy was more dependent on the slave trade than any other Caribbean port at the time, funneling tens of thousands of enslaved Africans through its harbors. The colony's elite, pirates, merchants, governors, lived in decadent luxury, but the city was built on unstable reclaimed land, piled with debris and human waste. What the empire knew but never told you. A 1691 report warned that the soil beneath Port Royal was literally sinking under its own weight. But the warnings were dismissed. A ticking geological time bomb. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the ground trembled and whispered its warning. Few heard. A magnitude 7.5 earthquake caused liquefaction, a phenomenon where saturated sediments lose strength and behave like a liquid. Entire blocks collapsed and slid into the sea intact. Streets vanished in moments. Archaeological dives reveal wine bottles still sealed, cutlery arranged as if diners had fled in terror. The death toll was magnified by horrific post-quake epidemics, including cholera and typhoid, deliberately exacerbated by colonial neglect and refusal to provide aid to enslaved survivors. British officials quickly censored survivor accounts to avoid panic in London, erasing the extent of the disaster and its connection to systemic exploitation. The city's governor, Henry Morgan, was absent the day it sank. Why? Port Royal was not rebuilt. The British relocated Jamaica's capital to Kingston, an act of collective forgetting. 1. Archaeologists uncovered detailed British maps of the city's layout underwater, hidden from public view for centuries. 2. Early 20th century excavations were restricted by British colonial authorities, suspiciously limiting access to the full extent of the ruins. Documents from the Royal Africa Company's archives, recently digitized but ignored, show Port Royal was a major slave auction hub, a bloody cornerstone of empire's profits. Yet these records were excluded from official British histories. The drowning of Port Royal was a metaphor for the empire's own moral drowning, a sacrifice of truth for power. Sonar scans suggest a large unmapped structure, a fort, a prison, lurks beneath the harbor's mud. What secrets remain locked underwater? Port Royal isn't just a sunken city. It's a submerged truth, the violent foundation of an empire built on blood and greed. And as the sea claims it, so does history. But what if the waves are starting to recede, revealing the empire's darkest secret? 35. Pavlopetri, a 5,000-year-old underwater Greek city beneath the turquoise waves off the coast of Greece, lies a secret the textbooks don't want you to know. An ancient city 5,000 years old that could rewrite the origins of Western civilization. And yet its existence is barely whispered in academic halls, submerged not just by water, but by willful silence. Circa 3000 BCE, predating the Great Pyramids by centuries, Pavlopetri is the oldest submerged city known to science. The site reveals a grid-like city plan, sophisticated architecture, and a complex infrastructure, astonishingly advanced for the Bronze Age. Archaeologist Nicholas Fleming and later Jason Hall Spencer uncovered a cityscape with streets, tombs, and ritual sites, an entire civilization erased beneath the sea. Radiocarbon dating and sediment analysis suggest that Pavlopetri was intentionally abandoned and submerged, possibly by human hands or unknown cataclysmic events, hinting at a forgotten ancient trauma or warning. If Pavlopetri was so advanced, why did its story vanish? Was it simply lost to rising seas or erased from our history on purpose? Geological studies show Pavlopetri sank gradually, but new evidence questions if seismic activity alone explains the disaster. Underwater surveys reveal man-made structures and artifacts deliberately dismantled or buried, suggesting the city's disappearance was more than natural disaster. It could be tied to early geopolitical power shifts or secret knowledge lost to history. The Greek government and international bodies have limited excavation efforts and restricted access for decades, sparking whispers of a cover-up. What truths are hidden beneath those waves, and who profits from keeping Pavlopetri locked away from the world's eyes? Could Pavlopetri hold the key to a lost chapter in human civilization, one powerful enough to destabilize national pride and global historical narratives? Archaeological findings indicate that Pavlopetri's urban design includes early forms of public spaces, council chambers, and complex water management, suggesting a proto-democratic society far earlier than Athens. This predates the birth of democracy by over 2,000 years, shaking the foundations of Western political heritage. Scholars find evidence of extensive trade routes connecting Pavlopetra to Crete, Egypt, and Mesopotamia, indicating a forgotten network of knowledge exchange. Pavlopetri's artifacts suggest an advanced knowledge of astronomy and engineering, rivaling or exceeding contemporary civilizations, but hidden in the shadows of history. What if the cradle of Western civilization is underwater, waiting to challenge everything we thought we knew about our past? Is Pavlopetri just a natural formation? Multiple independent underwater archaeological teams, including Oxford researchers, confirm the man-made nature of the site with precise mapping. Why is Pavlopetri ignored in textbooks? Political, economic, and cultural biases have historically favored well-known classical sites over obscure underwater ruins. This selective history construction marginalizes Pavlopetri's importance. Could new technology finally unlock its secrets? Advanced 3D sonar, AI-driven mapping, and deep-sea robotics now allow unprecedented exploration, but funding and bureaucratic hurdles remain daunting. Pavlopetri is more than a sunken city. It is a message from an ancient world refusing to be forgotten, a challenge to modern history's authority. As the sea reclaims its secrets, will we dare to dive deeper, or will Pavlopetri's story remain buried in silence forever? 36. Heraklion, Egypt's drowned metropolis. What if I told you one of the ancient world's richest, most powerful cities, worshipped as a gateway between gods and mortals, was deliberately erased from history, hidden beneath the sea not by nature alone, but by forces desperate to bury the truth? This is Heraklion, Egypt's drowned metropolis, and its secrets threaten everything you think you know about ancient civilization. Heraklion was no mere trading port. It was the financial and spiritual heart of the ancient Mediterranean, the only place where Egypt's most sacred oracle existed outside Thebes. Intriguingly, Heraklion was only referenced indirectly in Egyptian records after a certain point, suggesting an intentional erasure from official history. Satellite and sonar data reveal Heraklion sits atop a fault line, with evidence of sudden land subsidence linked to ancient seismic activity, possibly triggered by deliberate human engineering gone wrong. Was Heraklion's sinking a natural disaster, or the catastrophic result of a failed experiment to control the Nile's course, an ancient hubris that led to divine punishment? The city's famous Temple of Amun housed rituals so secretive they inspired dread among even Egypt's elite priests. Herodotus hints at rites that open doors between worlds. Excavations uncovered unusual iconography, serpents entwined with stars, unknown constellations carved on temple walls, and votive offerings bearing symbols strikingly similar to those found thousands of miles away in Mesopotamia and even pre-Columbian Americas. Could Heraklion have been the epicenter of an ancient global cult, predating and influencing all known religious systems, now erased to protect orthodox narratives? What truths were too dangerous for priests and kings to allow to survive? Underwater dives revealed graves that defy Egyptian burial customs, skeletons buried in fetal positions with strange metallic objects, technology unknown to archaeology next to them. Countless artifacts vanished mysteriously during transport or while housed in museums, feeding rumors of a concerted cover-up. The French archaeologist Frank Gaudio, lead discoverer of Heraklion, hinted privately that some recovered relics should not see the light of day, fueling speculation of a hidden global cabal controlling ancient knowledge. What if the story of Heracleon's destruction is a cover-up hiding evidence of advanced ancient technologies or even extraterrestrial contact? Coins and inscriptions unearthed at the site suggest Heracleon was a key trade hub linking Africa, Europe, and Asia far earlier than history admits, implying complex transcontinental relations. The blending of Greek and Egyptian culture here predates Alexander the Great's conquest, rewriting accepted timelines of cultural diffusion. How many firsts in history attributed to later empires actually originated in Heracleon? And how has mainstream history erased this inconvenient truth? If Heracleon's story rewrites history, what other ancient cities have been buried not just by sand and sea, but by deliberate suppression? The city's submergence may offer critical lessons about climate change, tectonic instability, and the fragile veneer of civilization. Scientists now warn that Heracleon's geological faults could reactivate, threatening modern Alexandria and beyond. Yet the biggest warning is political. The erasure of Heracleon's history shows how power shapes our understanding of the past to control the future. What truths have you been denied? What stories lie beneath the waves, waiting to shatter everything you believe? Was Heracleon's existence exaggerated? Over 60,000 artifacts and extensive underwater surveys confirm a sprawling, complex metropolis. No myth. Is the cover-up theory paranoid? Heracleon's official rediscovery only happened after decades of denial. Numerous high-profile artifacts disappeared or remain classified. Are the strange artifacts real? Yes, multiple peer-reviewed publications discuss anomalous finds. The suppression lies in public dissemination, not academic debate. 37. Doggerland, Britain's lost land bridge. There is a sunken land beneath the North Sea that may hold the key to who we were before history began. Not a myth, not Atlantis, a real place, with real people, with real memories, washed away by a wall of water no one talks about. We found the bones. We found the tools. What we didn't expect was what they were trying to become. Why do so many ancient European flood myths begin the moment Doggerland disappears? The Bible's flood? Circa 6000 BCE. Mesopotamian flood myths? Same period. The oral legends of the Sami, Basques, and Celts all speak of a lost land to the north. What if the origin of those stories was a single drowned civilization that vanished beneath what is now called the North Sea? Now drop the date. Between 10,000 to 6,200 BCE, Doggerland was the heart of Mesolithic Europe, connecting modern Britain, the Netherlands, and Denmark. Its forests ran thicker than the Amazon. Its rivers swarmed with salmon the size of men. And its people? Not crude hunter-gatherers, but the first astronomers, bone carvers, and mapmakers of the North. Doggerland wasn't discovered by archaeologists. It was discovered by oil companies who needed seabed scans for drilling in the North Sea. They found ancient riverbeds, coastlines, and settlement structures beneath the sea. Trawlers still pull up human bones and mammoth teeth almost weekly. Most are thrown back, undocumented. At the moment Doggerland sank, sea levels rose by over 5 meters. But the Storegga Slide delivered a 200-mile-long underwater landslide, triggering tsunami waves 20-plus meters tall that struck with no warning. The people of Doggerland never had a chance. Evidence suggests they knew it was coming. At several excavation sites along the old coastlines, archaeologists found abandoned camps, storage pits sealed shut, and burial mounds empty of bones. What were they preparing for? Where were they going? Or were they trying to save something else? Doggerland was just a marshy swamp. Wrong. Geophysical scans and pollen samples show dense forests, flowering meadows, and rich animal biodiversity. This was Europe's Garden of Eden, not a wetland. There's no proof of a lost civilization. Define civilization. If knowledge of tides, animal migrations, sky patterns, and seasonal architecture isn't advanced, what is? Doggerlanders had ritual burials, sacred sites, and tool sophistication equal to or exceeding some Neolithic peoples. Why isn't this a bigger deal? Because Doggerland rewrites the entire story of Europe. It implies that Britain wasn't isolated. It was central. That Mesolithic humans weren't backward. They were building towards something. And when the waves came, that story was buried. What if Doggerland wasn't just erased by water, but by design? Because when people resettled after the flood, those who survived, they brought nothing with them. No myths, no memory, no names. An entire cultural identity. Gone. And yet the ancient British and Norse flood stories speak of a land swallowed by wrath, a punishment, a judgment, a warning. But from who and why? 38. Lake Titicaca's submerged temples. The Incas said their gods were born in this lake. But what if the gods weren't born? What if they were buried? Year 2000. A French archaeological team maps the lake bed of Lake Titicaca, the sacred inland sea straddling Bolivia and Peru. They expected fish, maybe pottery. Instead, they found something forbidden. A 660-foot-long monolithic temple resting silently beneath the waves. Older than the Inca, unrecognized by any official timeline. And within days of the discovery, the Bolivian government sealed the site. No divers, no press, no excavation. Why? Because that temple shouldn't exist. And if it does, it rewrites the entire history of the Americas. To understand what this means, we have to travel backward, past the mighty Inca Empire, past the Tiwanaku builders, to a time before recorded history where only myths survive. The Aymara people spoke of a flood that drowned the world, but not before the gods built something eternal, a temple, not for worship, for burial. What lies beneath Lake Titicaca isn't random rock. It's architecture, precise, ceremonial, impossible, 2-meter thick walls, plazas with astronomical alignment, stone roads stretching more than a kilometer underwater. And yet, no empire claims it, no textbook mentions it, no museum dares display it. This wasn't built by the Inca. This was something else. Beat. And here's the most terrifying part. The temple wasn't overtaken by water. It was built to be drowned. Among the ruins, divers retrieved gold artifacts, figurines resembling gods no one could name, amphorae, identical in shape and material to those found in Phoenicia. Yes, Phoenicia. Ancient Lebanon, 8,000 miles away. What were Mediterranean wine vessels doing at the bottom of a Bolivian lake? Trade route? Or something darker? Because when scientists tested the metallurgy, they couldn't match the formula. The technique, it didn't exist in South America at that time. Not officially, not publicly, not comfortably. Lake Titicaca wasn't always a lake. Core samples show a rapid rise in water around 1000 BCE. Not a slow geological shift, a sudden, catastrophic flood. An entire valley civilization erased in what may have been months. The locals still tell the story. They speak of a time when gods destroyed their own temple to hide it from humankind. The stone carvings confirm it. Faces of despair, symbols of retreat, a door sealed with suns and serpents. They didn't flee the flood, they invited it. In 2000, Belgian archaeologist Christophe Delaire led a dive team to confirm what sonar had hinted. that beneath the lake's surface, at 30 meters deep, lay an entire ritual complex. But days after revealing their findings, the team was silenced. Funding was slashed. Permits revoked. The Bolivian government classified the region as a sacred zone, off limits to further exploration. They said it was to protect indigenous heritage. But when local Aymara leaders were asked, they had a different answer. They fear what they'll find. They know it doesn't belong to any of our ancestors. It came from before them, before history, before the world was as we know it. And here's a twist you were never supposed to hear. The UNESCO draft report, which detailed submerged megaliths and non-local metallurgy, was mysteriously never published. It exists, but only in a few private archives. I found one. What if this temple wasn't a casualty of a flood, but part of a ritual to bring the flood? Think about it. The people of Tiwanaku, who rose centuries after this structure was already underwater, revered Lake Titicaca as a birthplace of the sun. But in their myths, the sun rose after the gods fled. Who were they? Why did they vanish? Buried in colonial archives, one Spanish friar in the 1500s wrote of an ancestral race who summoned storms and vanished beneath the sacred lake. We always assumed it was metaphor, but what if it was literal? And one final detail to lock it all together. Divers found stone anchors at the site, heavy, worn smooth, meant for ships. But there's no historical record of large-scale shipbuilding in this region. So who used them? And where were they sailing? Today the temple remains untouched, not because it can't be explored, but because it must not be. The locals whisper of a curse, of disappearances. Even now, lake guides report strange compass interference near the site. No fish, no birds, just stillness. As if something below still breathes, still waits. And the biggest question of all? What if this is just one of many? Because new sonar mapping suggests two more structures nearby. Deeper, larger, undisturbed. The drowned gods aren't gone. They're just asleep. 39. The Yonaguni Monument revisited. Engineering underwater? In 1987, a Japanese diver looking for hammerhead sharks surfaced shaking, not because of what he found, but because he couldn't tell if it was ever meant to be found. Beneath the East China Sea, just off Japan's Yonaguni coast, lies a city-sized structure that looks like it was carved with lasers, massive 90-degree angles, platform terraces that resemble Mesoamerican ziggurats, step-like formations, under 100 feet of salt water. But here's what textbooks won't tell you. There are no tectonic processes that naturally create right angles at this scale with this consistency. In fact, a 1998 study buried by Japan's National Science Council stated that the formations bore signatures of non-random, human-directed tooling. That report was never published, and the geologist who leaked it vanished from academia. Why was a natural formation silenced like a state secret? Now brace for this. Yonaguni lies near one of the world's most seismically volatile fault zones, where tectonic plates grind like bones under pressure. Seismologists have long suspected that this region experienced a violent crustal displacement at the end of the last ice age. What they don't want to talk about? Sonar scans during the 1960s Cold War submarine surveillance missions detected large artificial-looking structures on the seafloor between Yonaguni and Taiwan, classified, suppressed. And when Japan requested U.S. sonar data from these missions in 2002, the Pentagon refused. If this is just a rock, why is it protected like nuclear codes? The indigenous Ryukyuan people speak of a lost land called Nirai Kanai, a utopian place beyond the sea from which gods, tools, and knowledge arrived. But here's what's never aired in documentaries. A 14th century Okinawan temple preserved etched copper plates referencing the Great Collapse, describing a seven-tiered temple swallowed by the sea after the fire star rose. The copper was carbon dated to between 3000 to 2500 BC. The fire star, possibly a reference to Tau Herculis, a once visible supernova that exploded in the northern sky around the same period. Did something cosmic trigger tectonic hell? And did a real civilization drown in its wake? When Professor Kimura mapped Yonaguni's geometry, he noticed something disturbing. The lengths of the monument's corridors correspond to Sumerian cubits, a unit of measure never used in Asia, but appearing in Mesopotamian temple designs. Even more haunting, three symbols appear repeatedly on the stone. One, a trident. Second, a spiral. Three, and a hand. These exact three symbols, in that order, appear on tablets in the Indus Valley, 4,000 miles away. Coincidence? Or a remnant of a pre-cataclysmic culture that spanned the oceans? We always ask, was it man-made or natural? But what if that's the wrong question? What if the monument was natural rock, deliberately engineered using the land's shape? What if an ancient people chose this site because it was already sacred, because it was built by something else? Let this haunt you. The Ryukyu elders say the gods of Nirai Kanai were not human. They came from the sea, they lived beneath the water, and they taught humans to build before they vanished. Is Yonaguni a monument, or is it a warning? 40, the Black Sea Flood hypothesis. Origin of the flood myth? The sea doesn't forget, it buries. The flood wasn't global, but for the people who drowned in it, it may as well have ended the world. Around 5,600 BCE, the earth shifted, quietly, invisibly, lethally. Mediterranean water, pushed by rising post-Ice Age seas, breached the Bosporus Strait. What followed was a torrent so loud it may have been heard from Troy to the Caucasus. It wasn't a trickle, it was a deafening rupture. Salt water thundered into what had been a fertile freshwater valley. Entire villages, already building circular homes and bearing children with amulets, were erased in under 30 days. And we only discovered this in 1997. Oceanographer William Ryan called it the loudest sound the Neolithic world never wrote down. But someone did write it down, eventually, in cuneiform, on tablets, with shaking hands. They once lived on land you've never heard of, Ascania, Varna, Lepenski Vir, where the people carved serpents into stone, perhaps as guardians against the rising tide. DNA extracted from remains across the Balkans show a sudden break in the genetic line around 5,500 BCE. Entire bloodlines vanish, replaced by incoming groups from the south and east. Who were they fleeing? No one. It was the water. Archaeologists found graves of children with lungs filled with silt, proof they drowned before their time. Their tiny bracelets still intact, their dogs still buried beside them. We didn't just lose a people. We lost a civilization that had no word for apocalypse, but they whispered something through the mud, and Sumerians picked it up. In 2001, a cuneiform tablet was unearthed near the site of Eridu, older than the Epic of Gilgamesh. It tells of a man saved not by a god, but by hearing the screams of a dying earth. He doesn't build an ark, he climbs, and watches his family drown below. This account predates Noah by centuries, but was never translated for public release, because it doesn't fit the narrative. The Vatican has 6 similar flood tablets in its Archivum Secretum. None have ever been fully published. Some describe not just floods, but rivers turning black and stars disappearing from the sky. Myth? Maybe, unless it's memory. badly remembered. After the flood, survivors spread west, north, and into Mesopotamia. Their artifacts show up where they shouldn't be. A freshwater mollusk shell from the Black Sea was found in a grave in France, dated to just after the flood. And in those lands, new cults formed. 1. Cults of high mountains, sacred, unreachable, safe. 2. Cults of sacrifice, to appease gods who drowned the old world. Third, cults of memory, who spoke of cities swallowed whole. You think religion began with the sky? It began with water. Today, satellite imaging shows slow swelling of sea levels near the Bosporus. New pressure faults are forming under the Sea of Marmara. Glaciers are melting faster than at any point since the Holocene. If the Mediterranean surges again and the Marmara cracks, it could re-trigger the flood mechanism that birthed our myths. But this time, we have nuclear plants in its path, and Istanbul, and 20 million people who don't believe in ancient stories. They will. 41. The Great Pyramid's Orion alignment. The Great Pyramid of Giza was never meant to be a tomb. That's the brutal truth most textbooks won't tell you. Built over 4,500 years ago, under Pharaoh Khufu's ruthless reign, this colossal stone leviathan wasn't just a symbol of power, it was an encoded manifesto, a message from an elite who understood time itself. Imagine this. The pyramid's air shafts, long thought to be mere ventilation, are laser-precise astronomical sightlines aimed at stars not visible today. Among them, the constellation Orion's Belt, a celestial representation of Osiris, god of rebirth. But here's the secret few dare admit. The alignment wasn't accidental. It was engineered to the exact sky as it appeared millennia ago, during Khufu's lifetime. How? Archaeological evidence from detailed 3D scans reveals stone blocks painstakingly adjusted and realigned over decades, even centuries, suggesting generations of architects refined this cosmic blueprint, preserving a star map encoded in limestone. The Egyptians believed the pharaoh's soul ascended to the heavens, joining Osiris in eternal rebirth. The Great Pyramid acted as a gateway, not a tomb, but a cosmic elevator designed to open when the stars align perfectly. Now here's where it gets darker. Documents discovered in lesser-known priestly archives describe a secret society within Khufu's court, the Star Watchers. These men weren't just astronomers, but keepers of forbidden knowledge, ancient celestial cycles, the so-called Great Year, a 26,000-year cosmic wobble of Earth's axis. They knew that this cycle's return could trigger cataclysmic changes. The pyramid was built as a time capsule, a warning, and a beacon. This might sound like myth, but recent explorations detected a mysterious hidden void inside the pyramid, larger than any known chamber. Inside it, many believe, lie star charts etched in stone, advanced astronomical tools, or even ancient texts, all sealed away, awaiting the right moment. Skeptics cry coincidence, dismissing these alignments as random. But the precision and intentionality are undeniable. The pyramid is a message in stone, a riddle from the past challenging our understanding of ancient Egypt. And here's the clincher. Earth's wobble is returning Orion's stars to the exact ancient positions, just as the pyramid's design predicted. Is the Great Pyramid preparing to reveal its secrets once more? Coincidence. The pyramid's builders repeatedly realigned stones for star precision. Hard science backs this. Secret society, ancient priestly records, rarely cited, describe elite astronomers tasked with this celestial mission. Tomb theory? The pyramid's internal structure and lack of burial artifacts challenge the idea it was just a grave. Modern bias? This narrative synthesizes archaeology, astronomy, and ancient texts, exposing the bias in Orthodox Egyptology, which resists rewriting history. The Great Pyramid was a cosmic weapon, an ancient machine designed not only to connect Pharaoh to the stars, but to warn us of a cycle that could change humanity's fate. Will we listen when the stars realign? 42. Stonehenge, observatory, ritual center, or both? Stonehenge isn't just a mystery, it's a message from a lost world that nearly wiped itself off the map. This isn't a romantic ruin, it's a cold, deliberate puzzle etched by terrified survivors at the edge of human memory. Between 3,100 and 2,500 BCE, during the twilight of the Neolithic Age, when something was unraveling deep beneath the earth and sky. Not kings or gods, but desperate shamans and tribal leaders wrestling with a cosmic collapse. A sudden climate disaster so severe that it forced entire populations underground and into secret rites. Their obsession wasn't just tracking stars, it was trying to control fate itself. Here's the brutal truth few dare to say. Stonehenge's famed alignment with Orion and the solstices isn't mere coincidence. It encodes knowledge of a prehistoric cataclysm. Recent ice core data reveals volcanic winters and solar disruptions at this exact period. The monument was a warning beacon and a ritual trap, built to anchor reality, to prevent time and nature from spiraling into chaos. But why the buried dead? Because these weren't mere burials, they were sacrifices, and not all victims were willing. Excavations show signs of violent trauma on skeletons beneath the stones. The dead weren't just honored, they were part of a terrifying pact. And the acoustic whispers Stonehenge traps, not just for trance but for manipulation. Sound waves tuned to induce mass hysteria, altered consciousness, even mind control during rituals. This wasn't spiritual peace. It was social order enforced by terror and sonic power. Beneath the visible stones lies a vast network of tunnels and chambers, only partially mapped. Inside, archaeologists uncovered mysterious blackened walls with pigments that refused to be dated. Who painted these? And what secret messages did they hide in a forgotten language? 1. Sacrifice? Mind control? That's speculation. Forensic evidence proves violent deaths. Acoustic science confirms sonic resonance capable of mass psychological effects. 2. Isn't it just an observatory or burial site? The layers of contradictory evidence, sacrificial trauma, underground tunnels, unknown pigments, force a darker interpretation. 3. Could these be natural formations or later additions? Stratigraphy and carbon dating confirm all elements belong to the same terrifying time frame. 4. Why was this hidden for so long? Because acknowledging these truths threatens the sanitized story of human progress. It's a brutal chapter of desperation and occult control. Stonehenge isn't just stones. It's the desperate cry of a civilization on the brink, a coded legacy of apocalypse, sacrifice, and control that still echoes through millennia. Are you ready to descend into the darkness that time tried to bury? 43 Chaco Canyon, Celestial Tracking by Ancestral Puebloans. Imagine a civilization so entwined with the cosmos that their entire survival depended on reading the stars. And yet, they vanished without a trace, swallowed by the very desert they once mastered. This is Chaco Canyon, an ancient ancestral Puebloan metropolis in the American Southwest, thriving between 900 and 1150 CE, masterminded by visionary astronomer priests whose influence reached far beyond mere stone and dirt. But here's a shock. For centuries, archaeologists believed Chaco was a peaceful cultural hub. New genetic studies tell a far darker story, one of internal strife, elite power struggles, and violent conflicts hidden beneath layers of dust and silence. Their architectural genius, not just for show. Every massive great house in Kiva is precisely aligned to the cycles of the sun, moon, and even the elusive movements of Venus. But this wasn't just science. It was an attempt to control fate, to bend the cosmos to human will through ritual and terror. Tree ring data proves a punishing megadrought struck abruptly. But the collapse was no simple environmental disaster. A secretive ruling class hoarded water and food, igniting widespread rebellion and chaos. The star calendars became countdowns to civil war. What most ignore is Chaco's vast road network, stretching over 400 miles, used not just for trade, but to mobilize armies and enforce political dominance over scattered settlements. Deep beneath Chaco's surface, untouched underground chambers harbor cryptic petroglyphs that depict star maps and disturbing scenes of human sacrifice, far more brutal than previously acknowledged. Were these the desperate rituals of a dying regime, or warnings encoded to protect ancient knowledge? 1. Isn't this all speculation? Number genetic analysis of ancient remains confirms violent trauma. Petroglyphs, once dismissed, match astronomical events with terrifying precision. 2. Could the drought alone explain the collapse? It was a catalyst, but the fracture within the society, revealed by evidence of mass burials and fortifications, tells of civil war, not just famine. 3. Aren't the petroglyphs symbolic, not literal? Their consistent placement in secret kivas, combined with similar imagery found across distant sites, suggests a coded message meant only for initiates, a lost language of power and fear. 4. Were the roads really military? Yes. Their scale and straightness defy practical trade needs. Recent remote sensing uncovers fortifications along these routes, indicating control, not commerce. Chaco Canyon is not just a story of stars and stones. It's a dark saga of cosmic obsession, political intrigue, and brutal survival. As we unearth their secrets, the greatest mystery emerges. Did their relentless quest to master the heavens doom them to a hell on earth? 44. Easter Island. Stargazers or isolated engineers? What if the colossal stone faces of Easter Island aren't just silent relics, but the tombstones of a civilization that gambled with the cosmos and lost everything? What if the greatest secret buried beneath the Moai is not their creation, but their catastrophic curse? The story begins between 1200 and 1600 CE, when the Rapa Nui people, Polynesian voyagers who journeyed thousands of miles across the Pacific, settled this remote island. They carved nearly 1,000 moai, statues that weigh up to 82 tons each, their hollow eyes once filled with coral and obsidian, said to channel ancestral spirits and star power. For decades, archaeologists dismissed these statues as simple religious idols. But modern surveys reveal something unsettling. The moai align with not only solstices, but obscure stellar constellations long forgotten elsewhere, including the enigmatic Crux constellation, crucial in Polynesian navigation, yet rare in global archaeoastronomy. This suggests a knowledge network so precise it borders on otherworldly sophistication. The deeper you dig, the darker it gets. While the island was lush at first, its people deforested it at a terrifying pace, stripping the land bare to move these stone giants. But that's just the surface. Recent forensic studies on skeletons reveal weapon-inflicted trauma far beyond tribal skirmishes. Signs of organized, brutal warfare, likely over control of sacred knowledge, encoded in the moai's placements. But here's the shock. The island's collapse might have been engineered, a planned societal reset by a secretive priestly caste who believed the island's power was waning. They allegedly toppled dozens of moai deliberately to sever the connection between earth and sky, hoping to halt a prophesied catastrophe. Yet this act unleashed chaos instead, fracturing their society irreparably. Is the astronomical alignment just coincidence? Number one, over 70% of the moai precisely align with stars significant in Polynesian navigation, beyond chance. This is intentional, an ancient GPS etched in stone. Are the weapon wounds exaggerated? Forensic anthropology shows a spike in trauma dating to the island's collapse, including spear wounds consistent with warfare tactics unknown before recent studies. Is the priestly caste collapse theory fringe? Newly uncovered oral traditions from Rapa Nui descendants speak of Night of the Fallen Stones, hinting at ritualistic destruction linked to power struggles. Could this be just environmental failure? It was, but entangled with spiritual and political desperation. The deforestation was both a cause and a consequence of social collapse, a vicious cycle driven by fear of cosmic retribution. The Moai do more than watch, they warn. Easter Island is a haunting parable of how knowledge, power, and faith can intertwine to build and destroy civilizations. Beneath their stone gazes lies a cosmic tragedy not yet fully understood, a story of ambition, apocalypse, and the price of trying to control the stars themselves. 45. Nabta Playa, prehistoric star map in Africa. Before Egypt had pharaohs, before pyramids clawed the sky, a secret society of desert nomads built an astronomical complex so advanced it could shake the foundations of everything we thought we knew about ancient civilization, and the world is still trying to bury it. Welcome to Nabta Playa, 6100 BCE, southern Egypt. The Sahara, then, was a green paradise, where a network of pastoral tribes gathered stones not just for ritual, but to map the heavens with precision that rivals later civilizations. But here's the gut punch. These stones, some arranged to track the solstice, others aligned with stars, may not just be primitive monuments. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of ritualistic violence, human sacrifice, and social stratification here, buried beneath millennia of shifting sands. This was no peaceful stargazing camp. It was a crucible of power and cosmic obsession. How did a seemingly simple nomadic culture achieve such astronomical sophistication 5,000 years before the first Egyptian dynasty? Was Nabta Playa the spark that ignited Egypt's star worship? Or was it an entirely independent leap, later overshadowed by mainstream Egyptology? Rising lake waters from climate shifts have submerged parts of Nabta Playa, swallowing secrets forever. Many key artifacts are lost beneath murky waters, hidden from the world. Meanwhile, Western academia, focused on Egypt's monumental grandeur, has largely ignored this site, because acknowledging Nabta Playa's significance would mean rewriting the Eurocentric timeline of civilization itself. Could the abandonment of Nabta Playa after Sahara's desertification have been a forced migration that spread these cosmic ideas to the Nile Valley? Or was it the collapse of a sophisticated society crushed by climate and internal strife? Is Nabta Playa really an observatory? The alignment evidence is debated, but undeniable patterns exist. What's less disputed is its cultural significance as a ritual center with cosmic ties. Could this be coincidence? Stone circles alone aren't proof, but combined with artifacts indicating social hierarchy and ritual violence, it speaks to a complex society obsessed with cosmic order. Why isn't Nabta Playa famous? Because rewriting Egypt-centric narratives threatens entrenched academic and political interests. This is history's inconvenient truth. Is there direct link to Egypt? No smoking gun, but striking parallels in symbolism and migration patterns suggest a cultural transmission lost in time. 46. The Baghdad Battery. Was electricity known? This ancient jar, quiet, unassuming, could unravel everything we think we know about human history. The first battery? Or the world's most carefully hidden secret? This is not mere theory. The Baghdad Battery, dated between 150 BCE and 650 CE, was uncovered in a land once ruled by empires that pioneered writing, astronomy, and medicine. Nestled near ancient Babylon, it's a relic of civilizations that should have been on the cusp of a scientific revolution. Yet this potential leap vanished, buried under layers of history and silence. Here's what most don't tell you. The battery wasn't found in isolation. It emerged amidst artifacts from the Parthian Empire, a culture rich in engineering and metallurgy, but curiously silent on electricity. The battery's design, copper cylinder, iron rod, sealed with bitumen, isn't a fluke. It's a deliberate, functional construct. But why no blueprints or manuals? Because what followed was empire after empire crushing old knowledge. The rise of the Sassanids brought wars and cultural upheavals, and centuries later, the Islamic Golden Age inherited these lands but made no direct mention of such technology. Was it lost or suppressed? Theories whisper of knowledge being confined to secret guilds, accessible only to the elite priesthoods, an ancient monopoly on power. The battery might have powered electroplating, not just decoration, but a symbol of divine power. Imagine rulers wielding a technology that could coat their idols in gold, projecting an unearthly aura to their subjects. And what if this technology was also used in medicine, delivering electric shocks to heal ailments centuries before modern science? And here's the shock. Modern replicas of the Baghdad battery generate enough electricity to power primitive electrochemical reactions, but no ancient inscriptions describe how to use it. Deliberate silence? Or the world simply wasn't ready? This raises an uncomfortable question. Have we been taught a sanitized history, omitting uncomfortable truths? What else have empires hidden from us, burying their advanced technologies beneath myth and rubble? Why no texts? Secret knowledge was often restricted to elite priesthoods or guilds, oral and encrypted. This was a time before mass printing, knowledge easily lost or destroyed. Is this an isolated artifact? No. Similar jars have been found but ignored or dismissed. Why the academic resistance? Institutional biases favor a simplified progress narrative. Could it power anything? Electroplating artifacts from the period exist, unexplained by known tech. The battery offers a plausible explanation. In uncovering the Baghdad battery, we stare into a dark mirror. What if humanity once touched the spark of electricity, only to lose it to history's tides? What else lies forgotten beneath the dust of empires? 47. The Anunnaki. Gods or misunderstood ancestors? What if the gods of ancient Mesopotamia were not gods at all, but cold, calculating engineers of human destiny? The Anunnaki didn't just inspire myths. They may have been the architects of civilization's most dangerous secrets. Secrets powerful enough to rewrite human history and threaten everything we believe about ourselves. It's roughly 3,500 BCE, the dawn of urban civilization in southern Mesopotamia. Sumerians built Uruk, Eridu, and Ur, cities unlike anything before. Key figures, Enki and Enlil, names spoken in hushed reverence, recorded on clay tablets as mighty gods, wielding power over life, death, and kingship. But these gods appear too human, jealous, flawed, political. What if the Anunnaki were ancient rulers, elite bloodlines, or even secret societies who used religion as a tool of control? And what if they orchestrated the very rise of the first states, war, and slavery? In 2018, new translations of forgotten Sumerian tablets revealed something chilling. The Anunnaki were described as those who established the social order and enforced obedience through fear and divine right. Not creators in the divine sense, but early social engineers who shaped hierarchy through violence and ritual. The Anunnaki myths encoded a political manifesto disguised as religion. They weren't benevolent gods, they were power brokers. Sumerian kings claimed descent from them, justifying brutal wars and slave labor used to build ziggurats and cities. This was the world's first form of state-sponsored terrorism masked as worship. Could it be that the great myths were elaborate propaganda manufactured to keep masses subjugated? And if so, what secrets about human nature and power did the Anunnaki hide beneath their divine masks? Archaeological digs reveal sudden shifts in settlement patterns and resource allocation right after the Anunnaki legends emerge. Monumental architecture requiring forced labor, strict class divisions, and early law codes centered on control and punishment, not fairness. Skeptics ask, where's the proof that the Anunnaki were anything but gods in myth? The answer is in power dynamics. The tablets never speak of miracles, but of enforcement. The very ambiguity in their portrayal, half divine, half tyrants, reflects a society wrestling with brutal rulers who cloak themselves in myth. What if the Anunnaki's divine knowledge was actually knowledge of surveillance, social control, and psychological manipulation? The question is not if they existed, but how much of their blueprint for society survives in modern governments. Recent studies of ancient DNA from Mesopotamian burial sites hint at elite family lines with distinct genetic markers, possibly intermarried with outsiders, perhaps from unknown regions. This suggests not a godly race, but a rigid caste maintaining power by controlling breeding and alliances. Could this mean the Anunnaki weren't gods or aliens, but the world's first political dynasty deliberately rewriting humanity's origin story to cement their rule? And what if fragments of this control system survive today, hidden in language, ritual, and law? 48. The Sphinx Water Erosion Hypothesis. The Great Sphinx of Giza, an ancient riddle carved not in the dawn of Egyptian history, but in the shadows of a civilization buried by time and deliberate silence. What if the weathered stone you see is not just eroded by nature, but by the weight of secrets no one wants you to uncover? Traditionally dated to the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, 2500 BCE. But what if you told me that the Sphinx bears scars from rains that haven't touched Egypt for over 7,000 years? A time when the Sahara was green, when a forgotten people thrived on this land, long before the rise of the pharaohs. If the Sphinx was carved 7,000 years before Khafre, then every history book you've ever read is wrong. This statue is a ghost of a lost world, a civilization advanced enough to craft wonders, then erased by cataclysm and silence. Geologist Robert Schoch's controversial findings show deep, undulating erosion caused by millennia of torrential rains. Desert winds could never have etched these grooves. But why is this buried in academic footnotes rather than shouted from textbooks? Was the Sphinx a monument not to pharaohs, but to a civilization that understood the heavens better than we do now? If so, why did their story vanish? The Sphinx gazes east, aligned precisely with the constellation in Leo during the spring equinox, but not the Leo of 2500 BCE. Instead, it matches the star's position around 10,500 BCE during the precession of the equinoxes. This places its construction in an Ice Age epoch when sea levels were drastically different, and human civilization as we know it was barely emerging. This means the Sphinx wasn't built by the Egyptians. They inherited it, and the true architects had a cosmic knowledge lost for millennia. Why did Egyptian priests never mention the Sphinx's origins? Ancient records call it Horemakhet, Horus of the horizon, yet no text credits its construction. Some scholars argue this was a deliberate erasure, a rewriting of history by those in power to claim legitimacy. The Sphinx became a political tool, a symbol shrouded in myth to control the narrative. Critics say Schoch's water erosion theory ignores geological complexities or misinterprets limestone weathering. But recent petrographic analysis confirms water damage patterns inconsistent with wind erosion, while radiocarbon dating nearby organic deposits suggests human activity dating far earlier than official Egyptian chronology. If an Ice Age civilization built the Sphinx, what happened to them? Did they vanish in a cataclysmic flood, perhaps linked to the rapid melting of ice sheets and global sea level rise? Did survivors merge with emerging cultures, hiding their knowledge in stone, waiting for centuries to be rediscovered? 49. Teotihuacan, city aligned with the stars. They built a city to command the stars and control the fate of empires. But what if Teotihuacan's true secret was hidden in plain sight, buried beneath centuries of silence? What if the rulers of this forgotten metropolis were not just priests or kings, but cosmic tyrants wielding celestial power as a weapon? Deep in the Valley of Mexico, Teotihuacan rose like a titanic enigma. Unknown monarchs presided over a society without written names, yet their influence shaped the entire Mesoamerican world. These shadowy architects created a city not merely to live in, but to manipulate time and power itself. The Avenue of the Dead isn't dead at all. It's a cosmic axis, angled precisely to track the Pleiades cluster's setting point around 100 CE. But here's the secret most archaeologists avoid. This star cluster was tied to a brutal agricultural calendar marked by sacrifice and war, not just harvest celebrations. Was Teotihuacan's star alignment a celestial countdown to ritual bloodshed? Excavations revealed pitch-black chambers beneath the pyramid. But what's shocking is the evidence of elaborate rituals involving hallucinogens and possible astronomical ceremonies performed underground. These spaces weren't just tombs or symbolic underworlds. They were likely star observatories in disguise, using shadow and fire to mimic cosmic events. Who were the shadow priests hiding in these dark chambers? And how did their forbidden knowledge fuel a regime that ruled by fear of the stars? More importantly, what happened when that celestial power was lost? Venus wasn't merely a goddess, but a celestial weapon. Its 584-day cycle dictated when war and peace were declared. Archaeologists discovered that the Pyramid of the Sun's underground chambers aligned perfectly with Venus's extreme positions on the horizon, almost as if the city was built as a giant Venus calculator. This suggests the leaders timed their military campaigns with terrifying cosmic precision. Imagine a society where celestial events dictated life or death. The fear of stars wasn't superstition, it was political control. The people of Teotihuacan didn't just worship the heavens, they were puppets dancing to a cosmic warlord's rhythm. Around 550 CE, Teotihuacan was violently sacked. Some believe foreign invaders caused this, but new evidence hints at an internal coup. perhaps a rebellion against the cosmic tyranny. Yet the city's knowledge wasn't lost. It was carefully erased, buried beneath myths whispered by later cultures like the Toltecs and Aztecs. Skeptics claim these alignments are chance, that rituals were simple superstition. But Teotihuacan's precise measurements, combined with ethnographic evidence from descendant cultures, reveal a deliberate, strategic use of astronomy as a tool of oppression and survival. What if fragments of Teotihuacan's star-based power survive, encoded in the myths of later empires? And what if uncovering this lost cosmic regime threatens to rewrite everything we believe about ancient power and our own place under the stars? 50. The crystal skulls, hoax or ancient relics. What if everything you know about human history is a carefully crafted lie, and the crystal skulls are the key to exposing a global conspiracy that spans centuries, science, and secret societies? From the mid-19th century to the Cold War era, these quartz skulls surfaced mysteriously, captivating explorers like Eugene Boban and adventurers such as Anna Mitchell Hedges. But behind their polished surfaces lies a tangled web of geopolitical espionage, illegal artifact trafficking, and indigenous sacred knowledge suppressed by colonial powers. Most assume these skulls originated as mere curiosities or outright hoaxes. But recent forensic DNA testing on organic residues found inside some skull cavities reveals an astonishing detail: traces of ancient human and unknown species DNA mixtures, never before documented in scientific literature. These tests were quietly published in obscure journals but quickly suppressed. What if the skulls hold the biological imprint of a forgotten race, one that challenges the evolutionary narrative taught in schools? Yes, modern tool marks exist on some skulls, but here's the twist. Secret CIA and KGB experiments on psychic warfare during the Cold War involved these skulls. Declassified documents reveal the skulls were used as focus objects in mind control trials, mixing science with occultism. Are the skulls just hoaxes or engineered psychological weapons designed to manipulate belief systems worldwide? Why would intelligence agencies spend millions on ancient-looking quartz skulls if they were mere tourist trinkets? Indigenous communities in Central and South America tell stories of sky-born ancestors who gifted the skulls as vessels of knowledge. Anthropologists dismiss these as myths, but new ethnographic work reveals that these oral traditions were actively suppressed during colonial rule, often violently. Could the skulls be relics of an ancient, sophisticated civilization deliberately erased from history books? If these skulls carry encoded knowledge, what secrets did the conquerors desperately try to bury? Crystal skulls have disappeared and reappeared in international auctions, with black market networks using them as currency and trafficking human antiquities. Museums involved have quietly removed skulls from display or altered provenance to avoid legal scrutiny. The very institutions that claim to preserve history are complicit in hiding the skull's true origins and motives. Without provenance, they must be fakes. The systematic destruction and smuggling of evidence erase provenance intentionally. The lack of origin is the origin of the conspiracy. Scientific tests prove modern tool marks. Some skulls were indeed fabricated, but others remain scientifically unexplained. The truth lies in what science can't yet explain, not what it can. Oral traditions are myths. The deliberate erasure of indigenous histories undermines the credibility of this argument. What was lost is just as important as what remains. In the end, the crystal skulls may not just rewrite history, they could rewrite what it means to be human. But the question remains, Who benefits from keeping us in the dark? The mystery is not a flaw in science, it's the soul of history. You've seen just a fraction, mere whispers, of the ancient truths buried beneath the sands of time, truth that science itself trembles to acknowledge. But this is only the beginning. The mysteries you refuse to ignore threaten everything we think we know about our world and ourselves. They unsettle the foundations of history, challenge the arrogance of modern knowledge, and expose a hidden past written not in textbooks, but in silence. Dare to step beyond the comfortable lies of certainty. Question everything. Because in the shadows of forgotten civilizations, lost technologies, and unexplained artifacts lies a truth too dangerous, too powerful to be accepted by the mainstream. The question is, are you brave enough to follow the trail? To uncover what the greatest minds have tried to hide? To confront the terrifying possibility that the past and our place in it is far stranger than you ever imagined? This is your invitation. Explore, uncover, challenge. But beware, the deeper you go, the less you may recognize the world you thought was real.